For racing fans in Canada, the exciting highlight of the season is the Players 200 race at Mosport, bringing drivers and cars of international caliber to compete for the Players Cup and $10,000 in
Racetracks used to be built with the land, not on top of it.
The race marshals round the track have a heavy responsibility. Their quick actions can prevent unnecessary pileups.
They used to flow. They used to demand respect and bravery. Some racetracks have withstood the test of time despite changing attitudes on safety and design.
The ticket sellers, the night's work is just beginning. Right through the night, race fans from hundreds of miles around journey to Mosport Park to set up camp, to meet old friends from last year, and to make this race meeting into the most memorable
Since
one of the year.
1961, this stretch of asphalt has remained largely unchanged. If this pavement could speak, the stories it would tell. This is the first permanent motor racing facility in Canada, and they call it Mosport. Only a handful of racetracks in North America retain their original configurations from decades ago, many altered over time to improve safety or the quality of the racing. But a special few facilities hit on that perfect combination. High-speed corners, steep elevation changes, off-camber sweepers, and it's become a trait of many of the most beloved courses in the country. Tracks like Watkins Glen, Road America, Lime Rock Park, Laguna Seca. These are the American classics. But north of the border, Ontario, Canada contains a racetrack equally as spectacular, and it's called Canadian Tire Motorsport Park. My name is Kyle Heyer, lead commentator for SimTV, and I'm joined tonight by rising IMSA star and Honda Racing HPD driver Tom O'Gorman for the second round of the 2020 Radenso Sports Car Challenge. Tom, last week, a field of nearly 60 drivers took on Circuit of the Americas in Austin, Texas. But tonight, we race with a new format, and we head to one of your favorite tracks, a 10-turn, 3.9-kilometer circuit called Mosport.
You hit the nail on the head, Kyle. This is my absolute favorite track in North America. I believe one of the more underrated tracks in the country, or in the continent, really. And it's just so fast, so challenging. And when you pair that with the action we saw last week at Circuit of the Americas, these drivers are so competitive. There's some amazing racing, and I think it's going to translate really interestingly from a track like COTA last week now up to Canadian Tire Motorsports Park this week.
Absolutely, and it's a 10-turn circuit. We talked about it. Tomo, take me through a lap here at Canadian Tire Motorsport Park, and let's go for a ride.
Sure, Kyle. It's a fast one. You start off at the highest elevation on the entire track and start finish well over 100 miles an hour at that point and turn in blind for turn 1. As the track falls away, it gains some banking and allows you to sweep down into turn 2, right back up to the highest point onto the track. And once again, you enter completely blind. Turn 2, one of the most daunting corners in all of motorsports. You turn in blind, you break down to the first apex, a little crest, shoots the car out to the right. Then you come back down for a second apex, falling about 6 stories up to turn 3 now. One of the first times you actually go under 100 miles an hour on the lap. Turn 3, a blind apex across into turn 4. You fall another 6 stories down into 5A, B, and C, which is Moss Corner. Then you begin the march uphill, turn 6 and 7, not really corners, we're going to call that the Andretti Straight, into turn number 8. That's the first time, the other highest elevation point on the track. A fast sweeping right-hander, a slightly tighter left-hander at turn 9, a slightly even more tighter right-hander at turn 10 to complete the lap.
That's a lap here at Canadian Tire Motorsports Park. Let's take a look at our car classifications for this evening. And again, the format change is something new to avoid a little bit of an iRacing issue. So we're actually going from 2 races into 4 separate races. But the first one that's up tonight is going to be using the Porsche Cayman 718 GT4, Tom. This is the Grand Sport category. Cars between 400 and 450 horsepower. Pretty heavy beast as well. Not a whole lot of downforce. Kind of a traditional, kind of similar to a GT3 car in a way, but with a lot less wing, a lot less aero bits on these cars, so they're heavy beasts. But tonight, no TCRs to worry about, so the tail of the field won't have to keep up quite as much speed.
And that'll be a big thing here at CTMP, because the TCR cars that we're going to watch here in just about 20 minutes, those cars rely a lot on downforce. And from turn 8 all the way back to turn 5, the TCR cars are actually faster around CTMP. Now, the backstraight is long enough that the GS cars end up being faster on the overall lap, but only by about a second. So this would have been a really interesting track to have that multi-class race happen. Unfortunately, that's not going to be the case, and some of these drivers in GS and certainly some of the drivers in TCR are probably relieved for that fact. But these cars very challenging around here. One of the things about COTA is there's not really long sustained sweeping corners. You're either linking S's together or you're pointing and shooting. CTMP is all long sweepers, so this is a very, very different track.
Qualifying underway here for our first of the 4 races we'll have this evening, and we're going to have 4 of them 13 laps apiece. It'll be GS, then TCR, then GS again, and then TCR again. Let's head down to the racetrack. Drivers underway, qualifying right now. 32 drivers on the grid, Tom. I'm going to guess that that's pretty important to get a good starting spot for tonight's event.
Yeah, and looking at practice, the top almost 15 were on the same second, and then you lump in the rest of the field, and everybody just so tight. So qualifying is going to be key, and part of that is also, if you noticed on the track map, the track is very, very fast, and there basically are no traditional passing zones or braking zones on this circuit. You really have to be ballsy and creative to get by somebody, and a lot of time position gain around here is because you're braver than somebody. As we look at Jeff Arroyan sweeping down through the exit of turn 2, if you're willing to hold the outside line, ooh, we're going to talk about that in a second, but if you hold the outside line around some of these corners, you kind of just outguts somebody. That's where you gain position.
Absolutely. Here's Riley Thompson in the 56, and was super impressive last week at Circuit of the Americas. His SIMSA Esports number 56 was a threat to win both races tonight, and he's currently inside the top 5. So I think Riley Thompson's a good one to pick for at least one of these race wins tonight. But one of the drivers that beat him was Ken House-Seal, the number 23 car, Tom. So you know how good Ken is, and he looks already like he's going to be on the top step again. Currently the provisional pole sitter with 2 minutes left in qualifying.
Ken's been really fast in this car at both circuits, but he's definitely found his footing, I think, a little quicker than Thompson did here at CTMP. And another driver that I think will be really fun to watch, which I'm actually looking for him in the top group right now. He's still got one more lap to go, I think, is Paul Darling, who also found a lot of pace in practice this week. He's there just finishing his final flyer, as he was in 6th and now moves to 4th.
Yeah, he'll jump up
on that final flyer.
Yeah, he'll jump up to P4 in that 155 and immediately gets bumped back to 5th. I think it was Lapras that beat him by just a little bit. Nicholas Johnson comes through in 3rd in the number 28. He just laid down a 124.2. And it's, again, a pretty stout field. We got 33 drivers on the grid, and there's a lot of drivers towards the back. Anthony Magnoli in the the 007 car, rather, in 28th. He's obviously a racing driver who's got a lot of experience in the real world, and it just goes to show you how tough the competition is in this series. It's his first start, and he'll roll off from at least 28th position tonight.
Oh, man, I mean, just look at the top 10. It's less than a half a second from first to 10th, genuinely, all the way from Ken Halseal down to Zach Buchanan. So we're in for some awesome racing tonight. And one of the things I was going to talk about was depicted perfectly there in qualifying, unfortunately, where last week at COTA, almost everything is paved because Formula One cars need that for safety at this point in our motorsports kind of progression. But here at CTMP, there really isn't a lot of runoff. The track is way fast, and if you touch that grass, there really isn't a long way to go before you hit a wall. So we didn't see a lot of incidents, especially, I don't think we had any cars on the wall last week at COTA. I suspect that we may not be so lucky this week with that.
Yeah, I think you're right about that. Again, this racetrack, one of the classic North American racing facilities, built in 1961, drafted up in 1958, and it has changed very little since then. Of course, they've added some runoff and moved some walls back, and they've actually widened it out to about 42 feet. So it's a little bit wider than it used to be as well, but obviously it's still a very dangerous racetrack in several sectors. And you've actually driven this racetrack in real life at Canadian Tire Motorsport Park in the Michelin Pilot Challenge Series in 2019, and it's definitely, I'm sure, heading down into Moss Corner in Turn 5, very daunting experience when that compression happens and pushes you down into your seat.
Yeah, turn 4, entering turn 5. Again, turn 5 is the slowest corner on the track, and that's really the only place where the car is slowing down. Everywhere else is almost over 100 miles an hour the rest of the lap. But because of the way turn 4 drops almost 6 stories down into a huge compression, that braking zone is really compressed because you're then using gravity as the car rises back up and bends into a decreasing radius right-hander. There's basically no opportunity to pass there, even though that's the braking zone on the track. So from the attack position, you really have to be brave to get by somebody, but on the defense, it's really pretty easy to defend a position here as long as you're not making mistakes.
Ken Halseal on pole for tonight's race. Let's take a look at our weather information for our first event this afternoon. High noon here in Bowmanville, Ontario. Ambient temperature 75 degrees Fahrenheit. Track surface, though, that is a toasty 117, and this racetrack can be a little slick at times, Tom.
Yeah, eavesdropping on the drivers in practice before qualifying started, and everybody pretty much agreed that it was very slippery. So it's probably 15 degrees cooler than what they saw at COTA last weekend, so they've experienced this kind of tricky condition before. But one of the most challenging parts about the GS car, this Porsche Cayman 718 GT4, is it takes 2 or 3 laps for the tires to become comfortable, and then 4 or 5 really laps before the car is fast. So we saw a lot of attrition on lap 1 last week. This track starts off, like I said, over 100 miles an hour at the minimum speed through the first couple corners. So it's going to be challenging to keep the car underneath you for the first lap or two while these guys try to get up to speed.
And we're going to let the starting lineup here in a minute just scroll along the bottom of your screen as we get ready to go racing. This race will take about 18 minutes from start to finish. And at the bottom of your screen is your starting lineup as Halseal and Darling on that front row. Halseal out of Pennsylvania, and Riley Thompson in the number 56 third alongside Nicholas Johnson in 4th and his number 28. Good starting spot for him. Lapras and Welker rolling off 5th and 6th as we let the rest of those scroll on through. So turn 1, Finian, or excuse me, I'm sorry, so used to talking to Finian in these broadcasts. Got to used to having Tom O'Gorman in the booth, but turn 1, downhill right-hander. The track falls away. You mentioned how hard it's going to be to get started here with the cold tires and the hot racetrack. So how cautious are we going to have to be, and are you going to just lay back a little bit, or is a 20-minute race too fast? Do you have to push from the get-go?
Looking at last week, I think the 2 keys to the races that we saw was mistake minimization and also strategic patience, because we're going to invert the field, I believe, at the start for race number 2. And that's really where that patience came in, but really minimizing the mistakes. At COTA, we were seeing people, even if you made 1 or 2 mistakes through the race, that was putting you outside the top 5, outside close to the top 10 even. So I think minimizing those mistakes, especially now that we're at such less forgiving track, that's going to be the biggest thing. I really think because this track is such a high-speed sweeper intensive track, that we're going to see a lot of cautious driving, though, because the car just won't be able to turn.
Absolutely. So there's the rest of your grid. We got 33 drivers on the grid here tonight as we head down into turn number 2. Camera's done by Finian D'Acuna for this race. We want to thank him. He's actually on course in one of these GS machines tonight. There's Mitch Welker in the 76. His teammate Zach Buchanan is a local to Canadian Tire Motorsports Park. So I think he's going to be a hard one to beat tonight. He'll roll off behind his number 76 teammate Mitch Welker down into turn number 3. We're going to head, and again, we got 33 cars strong. We're going to head down into turn 4 and 5, which is Moss Corner. And the first lap is going to be chaotic. It always is here. in any kind of race car, but especially these cars, they race so well together, so close together. So I think there's a lot of safety that needs to be taken on this opening lap, but once you get strung out, you can get a little bit more aggressive, especially once the ABS starts working in your favor instead of against you. And with the hot temps again, you're going to have to wait for your car to kind of match the pushability of your brain as you get ready for this 13-lap event.
And there's that 6-story drop down from turn 4 into the compression, the braking zone for turn 5, and you see the cars pointed right back at the camera as they jump almost airborne sometimes as you get the car slowed, and then down to that ultimate apex at right there at 5B. You track out onto the Andretti straight, which is doesn't really do it justice on the cameras, but is a huge climb uphill. So drafting is a big thing here because there are no traditional passing zones. The Caymans, especially once you get into 5th gear and 6th gear, you may be able to motor by somebody up towards turn 8.
And that turn 6 is, or turn 5B rather, is such an important corner to get yourself lined up for that back straightaway. But we're almost ready to go racing for 13 laps. It's the first race of 4 this evening from Canadian Tire Motorsport Park. Again, you're watching Sim TV. My name's Kyle Heyer. I'm joined by IMSA driver Tom O'Gorman for 4 races of the Radenso Sports Car Challenge. Thank you to Radenso and Lazy Rocket Vinyl Produce for bringing us this action here tonight. House Seal's going to lead them through turns 8, 9, and 10 and bring us to the green flag here shortly. Pace car is going to dive for pit lane, and the formation lap is complete. Green flag flies, and we're racing at Canadian Tire Motorsports Park for Radenso Sports Car Challenge. Round 2, and Thompson already in the wall on the front straightaway.
Yeah, trying to get a good run, and he just got away from him on those cold tires into the wall almost immediately, and he was second place in the points coming into this season, or this race, so that's big implications for the championship.
Another car getting shoved off. That's Couliari in the background, all off in the grass. Another car spinning. That is, I believe, Kevin Lee in the number 5, so he's gone around as we head down through turn 2. More cars sliding off course, Tom. A disastrous start for so many drivers.
Yeah, I think I saw Evan Schickel in the 33 was the second car off. I missed the first car. You can get the car slowed before it goes into the wall to minimize that damage, but you're not going to get back on track without touching that wall. As Ken Hausiel has gotten a little bit of a breathing room before now Paul Darling, who's got Nick Johnston all over the back of him, down into turn 5 for the first time.
Braking zone for 5. There is Zach Buchanan on the inside of, I believe, I'm taking a look at who that was. Buchanan's actually pretty deep. Oh no, he's actually P5. That was the number 87 that he had just gotten around. That's the Bombshell Motorsports car. But up in front is Hausiel by half a second. Darling's second place, then Johnson in third.
And watch this draft start to take effect. Looks like Darling got a really good launch off of 5B on this first lap, and he's already pulling up towards the back of Ken Hausiel coming down into turn 8 for the first time. You see that final rise. Riley Thompson only dropped to maybe 12th or 13th as he is now going to try to recover after that first lap, first corner incident.
Yeah, Buchanan actually went defensive off into turn number 8 to keep Kurt Crum behind him. It was successful. So lap 1, we've had a couple cars go off. Couliari in the 57 is out of the race. Andrew Rasmussen in the number 11, he's also got around. Eric Pennington slow, he's going to hit pit lane in his number 31. So I don't see any damage on that car, but he's going to hit pit lane here, probably to service the vehicle in some way.
Yeah, I'm trying to think if there's anywhere around this track to accidentally get a penalty, and I'm not sure that there is. So probably you're correct, servicing something. But interesting to see a breakaway with the top 3 or 4 cars, and then this big battle starting 5th place back for Buchanan, Crum, Lapras, Nyman, Barroso, Arroyan. I mean, those are a bunch of big names, and they're all nose to tail, but the top 3 are kind of breaking away from this one.
You mentioned Daniel Nyman, the Lazarus Esports driver in the 48. He's got Alex Barroso behind him, Jeff Arroyan behind him. The solid battle for 8th place. Kevin Zhu has just hit pit lane in his number 243, so trouble for him somewhere. But for the lead, it's still half a second between Hausiel and Darling. And everyone out getting spread out, letting the tires warm up, and I think we're going to see some more aggressive driving as we continue. Jackson Robillard flashing the lights at John Laughlin in front of him in that 157 for 14th.
Yeah, field finally getting strung out. I would say that Robillard right there in the number 98, sitting 15th, one of my drivers to watch. He did an amazing job last weekend starting on the inverted race up at the front of the field and did a really good job to stay there. I think he finished 3rd ultimately in that race despite some really big attacks from some of the faster drivers. So didn't have one of the best qualifying sessions. I think he started 19th in this race, now up to 15th, and he's going to continue to drive that way up the field, I think.
Ken Hausiel, his lead is dwindling. Darling was close within 0.2 of a second in the final corner, but I think Hausiel's a little bit better in this first sector as we head down the hill in turn number 2. Darling chasing him as they head through the trees here at Mosport, and Nick Johnston in that 28 car closing as well. And you mentioned the 3-car breakaway. It's actually 3 Project 2 drivers, 3rd, 4th, and 5th between Johnson, Welker, and Buchanan.
And that can be very comfortable to have a driver that you're familiar with behind you. You know they're not going to attack you, as we saw. Actually, Johnston dipped a tire coming out of turn 2 and had a great save, but lost a little bit of distance up to that group in front of him, which now gives Harseal and Darling the opportunity to break away as a 2-car train.
Riley Thompson started in third, had that issue on the initial strut, dropped below 10th, but he's now worked his way back inside. It has Barroso and Nyman within his sights now as they accelerate on the back straightaway. Right in front of them is a purple car. That is actually, I believe, a lap down machine, the 14, no, the 11, I'm sorry. That is Andrew Rasmussen, who had a crash in turn 2 on the opening lap, and Lapras in 7th. Going to head to driver's left on the outside.
Looking back at Thompson's car, the damage doesn't look too bad, and these GT4 cars are pretty sturdy, but the biggest thing is that aerodynamics up the back straight. It's going to be really challenging for him to make big moves because you're just a sitting duck when you're slow in a straight line. But I was going to talk about how Seal and Darling, both of those guys, I was going to say I don't know that they'll race each other quite yet, but Darling goes for the lead in turn 1.
And he's going to take it. Paul Darling to the top spot. Halseal's going to cross over as they run down to turn number 2, back to driver's right, and this is such a hard corner to stick on the outside. I think Halseal for now will tuck in behind.
You see how much the car moves around under braking. You're already headed downhill. You're turning in blind, and right as the corner crests is when you start to feel the car move around underneath you. You're trying to get the car slowed that entire time, and there again, Paul Darling's car just looks like it won't turn down into the corners, maybe overdriving the entries just a little bit. And what I was going to say before is both of these drivers very experienced in spec racing, mostly with the MX-5, and I was going to say that I'd be surprised to see them race until later into the race, maybe work together a little bit, but obviously Paul Darling's not thinking that right now.
Out of Moss Corner, turn 5B, and again, that 3-car breakaway still fighting amongst themselves. Deeper in the field, there's Francois Brou and Finian D'Acuna running the Sim TV paint. This is a battle for 15th position. And Brou in that number 69 car started 21st. He's up 6 spots, so a good climb so far for Brou.
Yeah, both of those guys have come up. Finian also up the same number of positions, so they've been keeping it clean with each other and taking advantage of the attrition from some of that first lap wildness.
Buchanan defensive into turn 8. He's kept Kurt Crum behind him since the drop of the green flag. And turn 10 is an invitation for disaster. We can't tell you how many times I've seen NASCAR Gander Outdoors Truck Series race here, and they had a crash in the final corner in the last lap. It invites you to dive bomb, and we're going to see that probably towards the end of the race tonight. Halseal loses some ground on Darling, and Johnston closes in from 3rd.
Takes a look into turn 2, shows the nose, maybe just trying to get Ken Halseal rattled just a little bit, but isn't going to actually go for the position. And these guys have to be careful because they don't want to, first of all, race for the wrong position. They're racing for 2nd right now, and you want to be 1st, but also the more they race each other, the more it's going to bring Welker, Buchanan, potentially Crum back up into that front battle.
And Welker was the 2nd quickest car on the racetrack, actually, last time by a 1:24.476. That was quicker than everybody but Ken Halseal. So that 76 car is closing the gap. He's 1.5 back from Johnson. How far back is that draft effective in these cars, or isn't that effective at all?
Yeah, that's right on the tippy edge of actually effectiveness, and he's not really going to gain on the guys in front of him because they all have draft as well, but it is going to help him kind of maintain that gap. So if they race each other, he's going to be in the fight. As Jackson Robilard's gone around exiting 5B,
Yep.
Gets it out of the way.
Let's go back and see how he got himself in this position. I wonder if there was some contact. He was in behind the 157. Just gets out over the edge of the dirt on the curb on the outside of the racetrack. Woo, the 11 car. Rasmussen gets a piece of him, but everyone did a pretty good job getting around him there, disabled in 5B.
So easy to do. It's completely blind, and you're just looking at blue sky turning based on muscle memory. And now actually that entire runoff is paved in real life. That just hasn't quite been updated in the game. And unfortunately, it caught Jackson out.
Kala Sadiq in the number 163. He started 27th. How about a plus 10? We're seeing a lot of drivers, one man's trash, another man's treasure. He's flew through the field, up 10 spots in 6 laps.
And that's put him within the inverted range. So he may be looking at a very nice starting position for race 2 if he can keep it inside that top 18.
I saw him actually get a little bit of dirt on the exit of turn 1. We've seen that be a trouble spot in the past. And something that might be as much of a problem in, there's a car around, that's the 11 of Rasmussen again. Who's had another issue. But the TCR cars, Tom, the differences between them and the GS machines when they go off track, the TCRs kind of get grabbed because all that power is going through the front wheels, but they kind of get yanked off course. These cars tend to kind of go around the other way and spin when you get in the dirt.
Yeah, usually when you put a car in the dirt, the drive wheels want to be in front. So a TCR car stays pointed forward, you just can't turn it. A GS car with the rear wheels being powered, it wants to go backwards real fast.
Running on board with Nicholas Johnson, and he's putting pressure on Ken Halseal for that second spot. And last time by was a little bit slower, but I think this lap he is definitely closed in. But then,
and right here, if he was going to dive right, that's that invitation in turn 10 that you were thinking, or that you were talking about. Kind of a last lap desperation, but you can see how inviting it might be. You just kind of chuck the car through turn 9, dive to the right, and then it usually ends with door handle to door handle contact.
It seems like Darling is really struggling through this first sector, and Ken Ausiel's been really good through it. He closes right in onto the rear bumper of the 155 as we get the halfway point in this race in just a moment here. But they're 1, 2, 3 chasing each other down the hill in turn 2. Welker has dropped back a little bit, and Buchanan and Crum continue their battle into turn 3. Crum looks up the inside, and Buchanan slams the door. And Nyman and Barroso also fighting. Francois Bruce gone around to the exit of turn 1. Significant damage to that car. And let's see, this might have been all on his own here. Here's our look at the replay. It might just catch the grass. Yep, right there. Caught the grass with the left rear tire and slams the concrete on the inside.
And you can see there's just no out. As soon as you lose control of the car, you're at full speed, well over 100 miles an hour most of the way around this track, and you just end up in the wall real fast.
On the back straightaway, Darling, Ausiel, Johnson continued their lead. Let's look a little bit deeper in the field. There's some other battles going on. Barroso and Riley Thompson. And Thompson is kind of stalled here. I wonder if that damage on the nose of the car is affecting the performance of that car. It certainly seems like it, as here comes Nyman to the outside of Lapras into turn 8.
And this is a great passing move. Like I said, if you're ballsy enough to make something like this work, and he's going to make it happen. Crosses over in front in turn 9. He's going to protect just a little bit on the inside entry to 10. But that's just gutsy moves. And then once that side-by-side action happens once, it continues to happen. That's going to be Barroso now falling the wrong way.
Oh, Lapras on the outside.
And Lapras both trying to get around him.
Yeah, Lapras on the outside, Barroso on the inside, and Riley Thompson behind him trying to find a way around. There's a whole lot of car in the way, though, as they head down to turn 2. Oh, contact!
Touch.
Now off goes.
Thompson's going to sneak through. Both of them go around Lapras in the inside wall.
Oh, man.
No actual impacts for the 15 of Barroso.
And it looks like Lapras will get turned around. Barroso gets the better end of that, but that was crazy. You can't crash there and not hit something, but they managed to do it.
Yeah, that was one of the least violent incidents I've ever seen in turn 2, real life or digital. This battle at the front, I have to imagine at this point these guys are just kind of being patient with one another. Ken Ausiel maybe studying Paul Darling just a little bit, and if a pass is going to happen without a mistake, it's going to be something like that, what we just saw Dan Nyman do, a really ballsy move around the outside of turn 8 or a dive lunge into turn 10 on the final lap.
Oh, we got more trouble in the background. It's looks like that's the 157 of Lachlan in turn number 5, and he's collected another car. That's Jeff Arroyan in the 233. Looks like Lachlan locked it up, and the 233 was already spun out. So those two cars just had separate incidents and then ran into each other trying to get back in the right direction.
Yeah, awkward moment, and you saw Lachlan actually just pounded the inside curb, and these Caymans aren't the best over the curbs in certain circumstances. They just start to kind of oscillate and bounce, and I think the car just got away from him while it was bouncing. But Nyman on the move towards the front. Mitch Welker is going the wrong way as Riley Thompson has now kind of gotten the gift of a couple positions based on attrition, and is going to try to work his way further up towards the top 5. Again, he was second place in the championship coming into round 3 here at CTMP, so not the race for him, as his most close competitors, Ken Ausiel and looking at the points, Nick Johnston, are both in the top 3.
Yeah, and actually Walker dropped back. He was as high as 4th in this race. Must have made a mistake a few laps ago because Crum and Nyman, as well as his teammate Buchanan, have gone by him. Charles Boley is way off. That's turn 2, I believe, to that corner exit, so he's gone for a bit of a ride. For second place, changing hands, Nicholas Johnson and Ken Ausiel drag race down the back straight.
Oh man, and that's early, so something must have happened to Ken in turn 5 in Moss Corner, because Johnston, you don't get by that early on the back straight just with draft. It would have taken a much longer time, so Ken Ausiel's going to tuck in, maybe go back for the lunge in turn 8. Nope, thinks better of it. Careful, guys, you're going to let Darling have this one. You start racing too soon.
He's driving away. It's 0.7 of a second advantage now as we head to lap number 10 of 13. And then behind him you see that's Buchanan and Kurt Crum for 4th. And then it's Riley Thompson all by himself in 6th place. And it looks like Brendan Burke in the 6th. He's gone around. This looks to be at the bottom of turn 2 again. Let's see if this is, yeah, it looks like we're going to see a similar thing as we saw. He just got loose and the car just snaps back around to driver's right and going to back it into the tire barrier.
Right at that first apex in turn 2, there's a bump and it pitches the car out just a little bit. It's easy for the car to get light and just lose the back end. I think it caught him out that time. But looking back at Johnston, not Johnston, I'm sorry, Thompson, real quick, you saw when that freight train of cars dissipated. Now he's by himself, and he's dropped way out of the battle. So that draft was the only thing kind of keeping him in here. He's just got to salvage this 8th place finish at this point, I think.
Yeah, I think the damage is also not helping. He's packed that thing pretty good in the nose area. For second place, Houseel and Johnston are still within two or 3 tenths of each other, but they have caught Darling a little bit. It's half a second now. It was 7.5 tenths. So I think the draft will certainly keep them in the fight, but when's the time to go? I would say we're getting down to it. 3 laps to go next time by. I'd say that's the time to go, but is there something else they're thinking about?
Yeah, 3 laps to go. It's time to go as far as I'm concerned. But unless, I would have said if Ken Houseel was just kind of sitting there in second, maybe he knew what he was going to do. But I have to imagine any strategy he had has gone out the window now with Johnston making that move to get around. And this battle for 4th is still really entertaining. Buchanan and Crum for the top 5. It looks like Crum has the pace, but just can't quite find a way around Buchanan.
There's Mark.
As they come down into turn 1.
Sorry, there's Mark Levance in the number 92 and Curtis Larade in the 37 car. Tala Sadiq we mentioned earlier in this race as we come to 3 laps to go. And Evan Schickel and Lapras, they're side by side. This is for 15th place. Lapras has some damage from that contact earlier with the 15. And Schickel's going to go on through for 15th spot. Zach Buchanan has had trouble in turn 2.
Oh, and it's a gift for Kurt Crum, then puts him up into 4th and dissipates that battle. And another gift for Riley Thompson, who's gone from 8th now up to 5th.
Yeah, just caught in the grass.
Yep. Ping pongs it off of both walls that time, no good.
Tony Chow in the 68 car, we haven't mentioned his name yet. He started 12th, he's up 5 spots to 7, so he's having a pretty good day so far. And Alex Barroso recovering from the incident he had with Lapras a couple laps ago, back inside the top 10.
Yeah, Barroso got away with one big time. He got a little bit of a touch on the entry to turn 2, but actually never really had an impact. So that 15 car should be healthy. And Tony Chow, he had an amazing run last week. He started 5th in the inverted race and kept it up in the top 5 for a majority of the race. The car upside down.
Yeah, that was Rob Gagliardo in the number 609.
Oh.
And here's a look. This is in turn 4. Yep, and he's going to lose it into Moss, and this is going to hurt. Oh, man. Caught the tire barrier and rolled it over. It's an unfortunate end to his first race of the night. And to Paul Darling and Johnson are racing for the lead. 2 laps to go from Mosport.
Down into turn 2, over that bump, you saw the brake lights flash on the 28 just to kind of balance the car out, and they sweep now into turn number 3. The first time the car goes under 100 miles an hour, it's a blind apex. All 3 of them pushing so hard. You see the car getting down to that really late apex, and Johnston looks like a little bit cleaner through those first couple corners. You see him turning in really tight on the entry to turn number 4, heavy on the brakes now down into turn 5, and Houseel just kind of hunting, waiting for the opportunity.
Here he comes up the inside, 5B. There's no move there, Tom. That's a hard pass to make down there.
Yeah, that's a teamwork pass right there. You have to let somebody by. You don't earn your place there. But look at what that's done. Ken Houseel now, that was the opportunity he needed. And look at this. Darling gives the draft to Houseel, moves out of the way of Johnston. He wants to bring Ken Houseel back up into this battle. He doesn't want Johnston there. That was a really interesting little, I wonder if those guys have talked about working together coming into this race. But now down into turn 8, trail braking through off camber and sweeping into turn number 9. We're going to be getting the white flag.
One more lap around, it'll be lap 13 of 13. Paul Darling leads the way. Johnson and Houseel right behind. 3.9 kilometers left in this race, and they're going to step out like fighter jets. Blocked by the 28. Houseel crosses over to get back to driver's left.
And he's still going to try to hold the outside through turn 1. If you can get the run up into turn number 2 and lunge late, Houseel thinks about it.
Here he comes.
He's taking the look.
Whoa, man, he almost stuck the nose in there and backed out just in time. And Johnson a little bit defensive, but they're 4 tenths back from Darling, so they need to work together. Johnson slides at the exit of 2.
And Houseel gets through, but Darling may be completely clear of even the draft pass that he was relatively in danger of having happen, but this isn't over yet. Johnston's still there.
These two are fighting hard. Darling driving away. Johnson deep on the brakes for Moss corner. He's to the inside in 5A. Now 5B pulls even with them. Door slam at the exit of 5B. Drag race up the backstretch. More contact as they head down the back straight.
And they're going to stay side by side all the way down this back straight because Houseel has the outside line. Even if he got a better run, Johnston's going to side draft him all the way up the straightaway, pushing him wide, gluing everything he can to gain a nose ahead in the 28. Houseel in the 23 on the outside. These guys were 1st and 3rd in the championship coming into this round, so this is for a lot of marbles.
Darling through and clear. He's ahead of the battle for 2nd. And for second place, Johnson and Houseel, defensive line for the 28. Checkered flag flies. For second, Johnson goes defensive into 10. Crossover by Houseel on corner exit. Can he get there? Darling wins for second. Drag race to the line, and Johnson will get him by a half a car length at the stripe. What a race between those two. Holy cow.
Celebration for Darling. I think Houseel actually gave Johnson a big push at the apex of turn 9, but that was strategic from Johnston, just parking him in the way. Nyman goes to the grass, trying to get around Tony Chow. And couldn't get there. That was for 7th.
Dormier flying off Labant, slow out of 10. Curtis Laurent and Talasarik will round out your top 11. Or top 12, rather. Lex Kuracek coming into frame there with Lapras hot on his heels. And I think we get a second to breathe here as the rest of the field. There's Jackson Robillard, who will finish in 16th. Montello in 17th. And then Drew Eisenman, Arroyan, Bagagnoli, and Evan Schickel, the rest of your top 20. What a race at the front of the field, Tom.
That second place battle, I just can't believe how clean and strategic that was, especially on that last lap down into turn 4. Johnston makes the move on Houseel. Houseel somehow sees him while he's catching the car, dropping from turn 4 on the brakes for turn 5. They go side by side all the way up the back straight. And they still got another race tonight.
Absolutely spectacular stuff. There's your unofficial results. Paul Darling at the top of the board. Johnson, Houseel, the rest of your podium. Crum and Thompson rounding out your top 5. In just a minute, we're going to jump to break for just a moment to bring you the first of the TCR races this evening in kind of an SRO style format. Again, singling out the classes this week. But I am very, very excited for the second race, which will qualify at 8:10 p.m. So only about 5 minutes away. So don't go anywhere. We'll be right back. Stay with us. Welcome back live to Sim TV and the Radenso Sports Car Challenge. My name's Kyle Heyer, joined by Tom O'Gorman. We just finished up the first of 4 races tonight. It was the Grand Sport category, and boy, was it a show. It was Ken Ausiel and Nicholas Johnson fighting for second place behind Paul Darling, Tom, and they put on a heck of a show. But now we get to run with the TCR cars, and this is a car that you've got a lot of experience in the Honda Civic Type R TCR. This will be the Audi RS3 tonight, but a lot of experience can carry over in this machine. 25 cars in the grid. You've had some experience in this car at this track. Walk me through what it's like in a TCR car around here.
I'll tell you, CTMP and TCR is a magic combination. There's something about the way that the TCR cars, you don't ever really have to put power down here except once a lap at turn 5. That's the only thing these cars don't do all that well. And here, starting a lap with Andrew Pilata, sweeping into turn 1, well over 100 miles an hour. You barely brake at all. You're feeding power all the way through the corner. You drag a little bit of curb on the exit, and then sweeping up into turn 2. Once again, just a touch of the brakes, almost flat out, really. And well over 100 miles an hour still. You sweep down into turn number 3, and it's just because these cars are so downforce driven, and the way they make speed is so much faster than you think they could. Really late apex to turn 3 here, and then you come down into, like I said, kind of the only section of the track where the car is unhappy, which is going to be exiting turn 5 up onto that long back straight. And I mentioned it in the first GS race, the TCR car from turn 8 all the way back to turn 5, right here where the cameras are now, the TCR car is faster than the Cayman that we just watched around this lap. And then once you get onto this back straight, because it's so long and because it's uphill, the Cayman claws that time back by about a 2-second deficit. But the TCR Audis, the TCR cars in general around this place, it's really something special. Similar racecraft as to what we just saw, because it is, once again, pretty much a spec race. We're going to see a lot of drafting. It's going to take some really gutsy moves to make positions up once the field has spread itself out. First lap mistakes are another thing, because these cars take a couple laps to come up to temperature, not as dramatically as the Cayman does. But Andrew Pilata finishing off one of his qualifying runs through turn number 10 and is going to keep it rolling.
We'll see what lap time he logs. It's a 1:26.074, and that looks like it's going to be good enough for second place, so he'll jump to P2. Peter Short making another start here this week in his 022 car. He's sitting third at the moment. Christian Gritzko in the 19, one of his first starts in the Sim TV series. He ran last week at Circuit of the Americas and had a pretty good run, and looking for a bit better, more consistent runs this week in his Vantage Esports car. So they're going to head down into Moss Corner here and set up for the back straightaway. And Caleb John Lavender, he actually is going to carry a bit of a penalty into this week after some contact at COTA and with Elias Roman. And so his number 999 will drop down into turn 2 in qualifying. So we got about 4 minutes left in qualifying here. Is qualifying of equal importance in these cars, more importance compared to the GS, or kind of the same?
Definitely the same. I wouldn't call it necessarily more important, but it is incredibly important. And right there on camera is one of the guys that is maybe more comfortable in the race than in qualifying. He's always a ton of fun to watch in the races. Brad Adams slings that. It's actually a reference to an old Honda livery with that Grid Life livery on the Audi. And we saw him race up towards the top 5, almost onto the podium in one of the races. But certain drivers definitely qualify better than others, and certain drivers race better than others. Luckily, qualifying is only 1 lap, and a race is 13 laps, so you've got a little more time, but this, again, is one of the hardest tracks in the country to pass at.
Kyle Herbst goes quickest in the number 89. He'll go down with a 1:25.849. And then Eric Mickey, second quick, and he was one of the drivers that won last week, the winner of race number 1 in his 88 Bombshell Racing Team car, so he'll go second quick. And I think these cars will continue to get quicker as you go on, in a bit of a slide. These drivers have 4 laps. That is as many opportunities as they get to lay down a time, and whatever is their quickest, which will probably be lap 4, will be the lap that will stick for the start of race 1 for TCR tonight. Remember, we got 2 more races after this. It'll be GS race 2 and then TCR race 2. And Krista Shong in the 41 heads down into Moss Corner. He currently sits 8th on the board.
An interesting thing to see will be on the warm-up lap, who chooses to warm the tires up very aggressively versus kind of letting the car sit there. And these TCR cars, because they are front-wheel drive, they tend to use the tire a little more hard than a little harder than other cars. So the Cayman's pretty consistent across the race once the tires come up to temp. The TCR car, you can turn the front tires on fast on the warm-up lap. If you do some burnouts, you do some you do some accelerating and braking, you can bring the tire up fast so that you have a good car at the start, but it will likely fall off towards the end, laps 10, 11, 12, 13 of that 13-lap race. So that is one other interesting thing that didn't necessarily happen in the Cayman race, is how quickly do you want your car to come up to temp versus what kind of race you think is going to happen.
Absolutely. We want to thank a couple sponsors before we start race number 2 tonight. The Radenso Sports Car Challenge is brought to you by Radenso. From the most demanding driving enthusiast to the budget-conscious first-time buyer, Radenso Radar has a radar detector perfect for you and your driving style. And by Lazy Rocket. From small stickers to full vehicle liveries, Lazy Rocket Vinyl Produce specializes in die-cut vinyl and graphic design. You can visit www.lazyrocket.com to learn more. Those links, of course, in the video description. And thank you to both of them for coming on board for the full season. And both of them offering season-end prizes to winners in both categories. The winners of each class will get a Radenso radar detector, and the podium in each category will get some stickers for whatever they choose, whether it's a team graphic or their car maybe. They'll get that through Lazy Rocket Vinyl Produce. So thanks again to those guys for coming on board. Evan Adams in the 59 car has laid down a lap at a 1:28.8. That's a little bit off the pace. We'll see how good of a time he has in this one. There's Francis Castillo Romero in the number 96, 24th best, and he'll finish up qualifying here and see if he can improve on his 1:27.2. And he does. Jump him up to 23rd.
While we were away, Eric Mickey jumped the pole by a little under a tenth of a second over Kyle Herbst. So Eric Mickey finished first and third in rounds 1 and 2 respectively, is the points leader by 13 points, which is a pretty big deficit this early in the championship. 16 rounds, 8 race weekends, if you want to call them weekends, over the next couple of months. But Eric Mickey having a strong start to the TCR championship here.
And this is a car that when it was released a couple builds ago, there was a lot of people that kind of flocked to this car. They were super excited about having a front-wheel drive race car in iRacing's lineup, something that was a bit more popular than the Jetta and the Kia. And I think a lot of people went to that car thinking that they would be good at it because it was something different. Well, it turns out that, there are differences between driving a front-wheel drive car and a rear-wheel drive car, but it seems like good drivers were still going to rise to the top in either layout. And Eric Mickey has proved that again. He runs in Scar's Ferrari Challenge with us on Thursday nights in the Ferrari GT3 machines, and he's pretty talented there as well. So there are certainly a lot of differences between this and a GT3 car, but I think talent will still show through, as we saw with you last year at Sebring and Daytona, and the previous year at VAR in Road Atlanta.
Well, I'll take that compliment. Thank you very much.
You better take it, Tom.
Yeah, but I think you put a very good point out that the front-wheel drive cars, yes, good drivers rise to the top no matter the circumstance, but front-wheel drive cars, especially in a simulator, can be very challenging because you have to be comfortable with a lot of rotation on corner entry, and especially when you take away the feel of the seat underneath you, the car moving around underneath you, sometimes controlling that rotation on entry will be very challenging, and especially if we can capture an onboard shot sometime along this race, going down into maybe turn 3 or turn 8, what you're going to see is that driver's actually kind of counter steering on the way into the corner, holding the wheel straight or even dabbing a little bit of left hand input all the way through the braking zone for that right hand corner, and that's kind of balancing that rotation to get the nose pointed towards the exit as early as possible and minimize the amount of work the front tires have to do. Because all the work goes through those front tires.
Well, we've got over 25 drivers lined up for the first TCR event here tonight. We're looking down from the starter cam. Over 12 rows of cars. We're missing a couple drivers on the grid. Caleb John Lavender, Dennis Barrett, Francis Romero, and Ryan Carwile. So just waiting for everyone to grid up before we'll bring you the starting lineup for this one. Here's a look at your weather. Very similar to what we ran, actually exactly the same as what we ran a little while ago. 75 in the air, 117 on the racetrack, and again, cold tires are going to be a pain to get heated up. And you mentioned earlier, we're probably going to see a lot of drivers try to warm up those tires, whether it be by weaving or by standing on the brakes to get some heat in the rotors. But this is going to be very important to get your car up to temp.
Yeah, and again, I'm going to be watching really closely on who's warming the car up, who's kind of accelerating and braking, or especially if you can see who's leaving black marks away from the start-finish line. You can do a burnout in these cars on cold tires up through 4th gear, which, having driven one of these cars, is realistic. They will do a burnout that long on sticker tires. You can carry it forever, but if certain drivers are choosing not to do that, those are the guys that are going to be fast at the end of this race. The drivers who...
I was going to say, I've also seen you drift a front-wheel drive car too, so maybe that's not indicative of everybody's talent, but no, I think it's great. These cars, again, they got a lot of power, but it's the downforce level that's really a lot higher than those GS cars. These things will rip around a corner. They got a lot of aero, especially on the rear of these cars, and that wing's pretty high up off the tailgate there to get it up above the roof line so it can provide some downforce.
Yep, the GS car, much less modified, but a better starting platform, if you want to call it that. TCR car, it's an economy car, basically, and it's an Audi, but it's a front-wheel drive Audi, and it's called the RS3, but it's actually basically the A3 engine that's put in it. So they have to modify it a whole lot more to get it to that same performance level. And interesting to see Mickey choosing to warm tires, Herbst on the outside with Pilata behind. Neither of those guys really moving around a whole lot, so they might be trying to delay and be fast towards the end of this race.
Starting lineup rolling along the bottom of your screen. Caleb John Lavender again, a penalty after last week for avoidable contact down in turn 13 at Circuit of the Americas. There's Elias Roman, who is on the receiving end of that contact. We'll start this race in 7th. Darwin Meintz, brand new to the series. He'll roll off in 10th tonight in his number 72. Brian Chabelski in the 12 will roll off 11th. Louis Alessi in the number 43 rolls off in 12th. Will Robbins and Brad Adams 13th and 14th. That's back in row number 7. And Adams, a member of the Grid Life family. Michael Shea, Andrew Chow, 15th and 16th in their 78 and 16. Ryan Kristoff, another Grid Life competitor, and Dennis Barrett frequently races in the Washington, D.C. region SCCA events that runs with us usually on Wednesday nights, but now on Friday nights for the next couple of weeks. There's Benson Ty, Andrew Mickey, Eric's brother, rolls off 22nd towards the tail of the field tonight. Up the back straightaway, now you see them weaving their time on the front couple rows, getting those tires warmed up, getting some heat in the tires and brakes. And we're ready to go racing here for the first of 2 TCR events. Again, 13 laps, same distance as the Grand Sport race from a little while ago. And I think these cars tend to race even a little bit closer than the GS cars do, especially that's even indicative of the real world racing too. The leader's really never very far from the rest of the field, so we'll see how that is. I also think we're going to see a little bit less carnage on the opening lap. Again, the front wheel drive layout a bit more stable on throttles. That should help as we get rolling tonight.
I would agree with that, and I certainly hope you're right.
13 laps on tap. It's Eric Mickey and Kyle Herbst. Mickey in the blue and white Audi, and Herbst in the Sour Patch Kids colored machine, rolling through turn 9, through a bit of a dip into turn number 10. 13 laps on tap, and the green flag flies. We're racing at Mosport for the first of 2 TCR events tonight. Side by side down to turn 1, Mickey and Herbst run together. Herbst's going to tuck in behind and maybe try to cross him up at the exit of 1.
Herbst might have a look at turn number 2, and Pilata's going to try to go with him after Pilata on the outside. Great start to move in front of Lavender. Whole field through turn 1 clean.
And down into turn number 3 already. There's Andrew Pilata in the 14. That's that red, white, and black car. A bit of side-by-side deeper in the field. There's, looks like Louis Alessi on the outside. Will Robbins on the inside. That's that black car. And a little bit of a slip and slide by some cars here on cold tires.
Yeah, huge slide from Brad Adams, and then we have one car finally in the wall. That is
Andrew Mickey.
Andrew Mickey, yeah, I was going to say one of the Mickeys in the wall.
Oh, car round, big stack up in Moss Corner, and everybody's going to pile up down here. Wow, there's a bunch of cars involved. Bodywork, Brad Adams is in there as well. Now, that's a lot of damage to the 21 car of Adams. And let's go back briefly and see how that's all got started. I think I saw, trying to see who was the first car to go around here. It was Ryan Carwile on the 71.
Yeah, and this track just not that wide, so once you gotta get that fanning out effect, and Brad Adams unfortunately bailed off the track trying to get through and went straight into the front of the 72 car, but not that wide of a track, and when you park a car halfway across it, there's just nowhere to go, and the whole field stacked up except for pretty much the top 4 or so, and then the rest of the field now recovering.
Ooh, Benson Ty in the 503's got a lot of damage. There's Francis Castillo Romero in the 96 up to 15th position. And everyone else kind of single filed out now. I think that that Moss Corner incident's going to spread the folks out just a little bit. And the 503 goes defensive. That's Will Robbins in the 35, who started this race in 13th. He's actually dropped 3 spots back to 16th.
Yeah, I think that was the 72 of Mentz trying to come back around the 35. I'm sorry, trying to get a run down on the entry to turn number 1. But the field now balancing itself out. Halfway through lap 2, we can take a breather.
Finally getting to take a deep breath here. For second place, Pilata has gotten it away. We're missing Kyle Herbst. So
Herbst is gone.
Yeah, he's dropped down the order quite a bit. Run at 132, so he got kind of, oh, he's sliding again in 5, and he's going to slide off the course again. Throttle back up, he'll lose a spot to Carwile, but drop to P7. So Herbst struggling right now.
Yeah, not the start Herbst wanted. Again, he was right up at the front battling for the lead, and now he's all the way back in. I think that's 8th or 9th place. And then we have this huge chunk of cars that were all involved in that big fanning out in Moss Corner the first time.
There it is.
See just how spread out that top 5 is.
Yeah, there's the 89 of Kyle Herbst again. I think we would see these cars so close together, but a chaotic first lap kind of spread the field up. Eric Mickey has Pilata closing in 2/10 back now. I don't think our battle for the lead is done at all. Still very early in this race, and that 14 car has caught our leader.
Yeah, and Mickey was the one warming the tires most aggressively of that whole front group. Pilata, I didn't see a whole lot of action, so if he can kind of hang in this draft, let the car come to him without abusing it too hard, he may have the upper hand in the closing laps. But Lavender and Short in 3rd and 4th, the 999 and the 022, all within striking distance comfortably of this lead pack. Any of these guys could be on the podium.
You see that 4-car breakaway right now, then it's a little while back to find Christian Gritzko. That's that bright blue and black Audi RS3 TCR. Then Carwile, Louis Alessi in the 43. He's gone out. Oh, and there's another car slow. And try to see what car that is, but Alessi in the 43 went wide in turn 2, and that's a scary place to go wide, especially in a front-wheel drive car. Here's a look. It looks like he might have just gotten in a little bit hot, and the car's going to sidestep out, understeer off, and he went for quite the off-track excursion there.
Yeah, and he not involved with the other car that was already off, but lucky to not hit anything, because once again, you go off in turn 2, it's usually a big off.
There's Dennis Barrett right in front of these guys. He's behind Ryan Kristoff. That's that zebra stripe car. But Chris Harp, another new entry to the series, started in 24th. He's up to 18th, so took advantage of some of the drivers that had issues early. And right up in front, you see Benson Tai and Will Robbins. Robbins has been trying to get around this group for a couple laps, but has been unable to do so. And all the way dragging the wheels off on drivers left as they head towards 8.
A little bit of side-by-side in turn 8. No, thinks better of it for the 503 of Benson Tai, and that's going to give Robbins an opportunity to maybe poke out. And here's that turn number 9 where you said you might be able to make a lunge. Robbins, you saw he could have shoved the nose in there. It's tempting to think about it, but makes the smart call. Pokes out once more, going for turn number 1 this time. They're fully overlapped.
Oh, there's going to be a bit of contact there, and looks like Ty's going to get thrown off course, and he's going to drag the tires through the gravel and lose 2 or 3 spots, maybe even 4. A little bit of argy-bargy down there in turn 1.
Yeah, and they had plenty of room, so they didn't really need to touch there, but unfortunately Benson Tai gets moved off the track just a little bit.
There's Evan Adams.
Side by side is this whole field of cars. I think that's pretty much 10th through 20th all running together.
Yep, and up at the front, Eric Mickey has established a 6/10 of a second lead, but Pilata closed in a little bit through Moss Corner, and the top 4 pretty orderly all the way back to Christian Gritzko, then Carwile, and the driver that started second in this race, Kyle Herbst. So Herbst really struggled on those cold tires. I'm curious to see if his pace will be back where it was in qualifying, because he just ran a 1:25.8, which was quicker than everybody else on the racetrack, and he has the fastest lap of the race so far.
Yeah, fire underneath him in the 89 car, and also looking at the front of the 19, Christian Gritzko in the 5th place, that blue car, a lot of damage on the front of that car, which is not good for aerodynamics up the back straight, so I think he may be a sitting duck at some point for both Carwile and Herbst behind, if that damage is significant enough.
Well, you're just trying to fit the pieces together of the puzzle. Whose damage does that belong to? And you almost wish that you had you could trade paint actually, so you could see which car had the receiving end of that contact from the 19, because I don't think it was in a wall if he's still running in 5th. So someone's gotten the boot from that blue car.
Yeah, the only car I'm looking at is the back of Carwile, because Carwile ended up backwards in front of the field somehow. I don't see any damage on the back of that car, though.
Side of it, though, he's got some damage, and he started in 6th, so it's possible that Gritzko started behind him. So yeah, maybe we're putting the pieces together there, Tom. I think those two might have had some contact.
Perhaps that's just speculation, because I think half the cars in the field hit Carwile at some point through that mess. But they're sweeping down through turn number 4 now. 5 laps complete, 13 total. You see Herbst is now fully caught back up to this group of cars. We'll see if he can do anything with the draft on the back straightaway as these guys battling for the final in the top 5.
Yeah, Gritzko continues to run really quick laps, as does Kyle Herbst. They were all quicker than the leaders, and we have a battle for the lead on the back straightaway now. Here comes Pilata to the outside of Andrew Mickey as they head into turn 8. This is a tricky place to hold serve on the outside, and Pilata might have to tuck back in line, but he holds even with them and now gets re-cleared as they head to 9.
Back to single file, and one of the things with the front wheel drive cars is they don't really like to go offline all that well. They're really fast when they're online, and they're really fast when they're not getting interrupted, but they don't recover nearly as well as, say, the GS cars we just watched. So sticking around the outside of turn 8, it's a high demand in any car, but it's exceptionally high in the TCR cars. As Pallada's got to run maybe through turn number 1, takes a peek into turn number 2, maybe just trying to fill the mirrors of the 88. But Mickey is certainly under attack right now by the 14 car.
And he's having to not make any mistakes right now, and a mistake here is costly. Again, at Circuit of the Americas last week, you make a mistake, okay, you run wide, all good, no harm, no foul. Here, if you make a mistake, you're going to figure out how hard a tire wall feels here pretty quickly.
And these guys had strung out just a little bit the last time we checked in with them, and now it's right back to a 4-way battle. Shorten had started to drop off the back of this, and now he's there. So these guys went a little bit of side-by-side action, and just that quickly, it went from a 2-car battle back to a 4-car battle.
Kyle Herbst running the back of Carwile and Gritzko trying to move his way back forward after his early mistakes. But again, I think what you're going to see is these cars kind of accordion back together with the draft. These things, they respond a little bit better to the draft than the GS cars do. You see Pallada going to the outside here. You try this enough, you might get it to work one lap or another.
It's just so challenging because on the inside line you have both a little bit more camber to work with, and you also have less distance to cover. So as long as Mickey keeps the inside line and doesn't make any mistakes, kind of referenced it in the track walk, map walkthrough, it's just really, really challenging. But side by side, Herbst tries to go around the outside of turn number 10 on Carwile. They're going to go side by side onto lap number 8.
We've seen this, we've seen this kind of turn out poorly before for Benson Ty. Carwile takes a whole bunch of curb down there in turn 1. And the interesting thing about that corner is there's actually pavement to the inside of that curb, and you can use all the way to the wall. It's pretty bumpy down there, Tom, but it looks like the 71 took it, but it wasn't fast enough, and Herbst goes to 6th.
Carwile doing a courteous job for Herbst to let him get through there, and now Herbst can set his sights on Gritzko, trying to get back up into the top 5. And looking back at championship points, Herbst was 5th coming in here, so he needs to make as many points up as he can because he had a little bit of unfortunate luck in race number 1 back at Coda.
Again, your top 4 all 1, 2, 3, 4 within 1.3 seconds of each other. 3/10 between Mickey and Pallada. We're working lap number 7 past the halfway point of this race. And starting to run out of time, about 9 minutes of racing remaining. And Pallada might again try driver's left here. If he can just pinch Mickey down enough to maybe catch the curb and get that car loose, he might be able to get around him out there. But I'm thinking after we've seen this a couple times, he's going to have to head to the inside at one point or another.
I got to say, watching these kind of races, right now we're kind of in the waiting game for somebody to make that move, and it can be a little bit of a lull. But in the car, these races are the most intense because you just can't put a foot wrong at any moment. You got to be inch perfect because the moment you make that mistake is when the guy can pounce. So this is such intense stuff for the top 4 in the cars.
Battle for 14th is Francis Castillo Romero in the 96th, and Will Robbins, Dennis Barrett. And Barrett is typically runs up quite towards the front in the WDCR categories, and started 18th up to only 16th, so his progress has been relatively slow tonight, but about to catch a small group of cars between Robbins and Romero, so I imagine we'll have a bit of a battle back here as well as up at the front.
It's also a statement, runs wide, Barrett keeps it on the track, that's a good catch. It's the same mistake we saw Alessi make, and Alessi got to let the car get away from him, but I was going to say that's just kind of a commentary on how competitive this field is. You take, kind of the front runners of multiple leagues and mash them into a league, and suddenly a front runner is only good enough for 15th,
Yeah, it's a lot of competition in this series. Evan Adams has had trouble. He heads back to pit lane, but Eric Mickey still holds the lead on the back straightaway as we work towards lap number 9. Pallada again with a big run, and I think he's just going to driver's left, if anything, not to just kill off his momentum. He's just going out there and just turning into arc turn 8 better, and he's going to stay in behind Mickey this time through 8 and 9.
I don't know. When you cut to that overhead cam, it almost looked like Pallada backed off towards the end of that straightaway. He had a big run starting about halfway through that straightaway, and once he started to get close to the back of Mickey, it looked like he just kind of lifted a little bit and waited for that to happen, and that might have been my eyes tricking me, but Pallada may have a plan going into the final couple laps of this race.
Yeah, he seems too complacent right now. He's sitting in line and just kind of hanging out. I don't think that's all Pallada has to offer tonight. He's certainly going to be knocking on that rear bumper here shortly. And he's got
watch the wheel.
Yep.
See if he does the counter steer into turn number. There it is. His straight hands catches a little bit, leading the car down in that right-hand corner, and the car is rotating underneath him. It's such an interesting balance with these front-wheel drive cars.
And heading down into turn 4. And then on the brakes, is he actually tacking out in 5th gear? Is that something, would you rather stay in a lower gear and rev it out versus shifting up and maybe losing time on the shift?
Yeah, it's just kind of an awkward right in between the gears moment, and it's really kind of a wash one way or the other. So you get a little more engine braking by keeping the car way up in the revs in 5th gear than going to 6th, if anything else.
Andrew Chow in the cars, a couple cars off at the exit of Moss Corner. And one of them is Tyler Jones in the 29, Andrew Chow in the 16. They've had some contact. Let's go back and see how this happened here. Looks like, does Jones... It's a Chow that went off first. Oh, Chow was already off. And he's going to spin down and actually clobber Tyler Jones as he came on through, and he got a big piece of the tire wall as well.
Yeah, that was the battle for around 10th.
There's another look at it.
Unfortunately, Chow didn't really do anything wrong. The car was already away from him. And Jones, the unfortunate beneficiary of that loss of control.
Oh, hope he doesn't need that driver's side mirror because he doesn't have it anymore. And he'll have to rely on the passenger in the rear view. Big jump over the curb in turn 10, up for the lead, and they're getting on it now. 4 laps to go, and Pilata all over Mickey. I know he's got pressure from Caleb John Lavender and the 999 right behind him, so I think Pilata's decision isn't solely based on his own decisions. It's probably based on how much John Lavender is pressuring him from behind.
And he's got to assess that every single lap. It's a totally fluid situation when you're both under attack and attacking. If he was not under attack from behind at all, he could sit there as long as he wanted to. But that one lap that Lavender happens to get a good run onto the back straightaway, Pilata's plans go out the window.
And staying defensive is the key. If Eric opens up a door, I think Pilata's going to just slam into it and throw it down, because here he comes to driver's left again up towards turn 8. Do you think he can build a big enough run to make this pass, or is it going to have to be done a different way?
He's going to just have to be ballsy, and this is the lap he's trying it. He sweeps around the outside. He's going to make it stick in the entry to turn number 9. If nothing else, they're still going to go side by side through turn number 9.
That was tight. Into turn 10, he's going to try to cross him over. He jerks that car back to the right, but can't quite build up a big enough of a run. Now he's going to swing back to the left as Mickey goes defensive for turn 1.
But now he knows it can work. He's got 2 more laps to try to make it happen, but he knows it can work.
That's the key here as they head down towards turn number 2. Clayton corner and dropping off a cliff. And Mickey missed the apex there just a little bit, tucks it in tight, and Pilata can't get the nose in there. But now any mistake that Mickey makes, Pilata's just going to take advantage of it.
Now it's Pilata's turn to run a little bit wide. You saw he was on the brakes just a little bit too long. And now Lavender almost came up to the back bumper and gave him a push at the apex of turn number 3. And like I said, this may not be the most exciting side-by-side crazy action like we saw in the GS race, but in the car, this is the most intense kind of racing you're ever going to have.
This is a chess match at 150 miles an hour, and tucks it in tight for turn 5B and up back along the back straightaway again. And these cars punch a pretty big hole in the air, and Pilata's been taking advantage of it. We'll see if he tries the same thing again, or if he'll be more patient and try somewhere else.
He's got this lap in the next one, and that's it. Nicky got a good run off of turn number 5, but look at that freight train, the 14, coming up alongside the 88.
Here he comes to the outside into the braking zone for turn 8. He's going to back off and tuck in tight. Maybe hope Mickey overdrove it. He did slightly, but he'll get back to the apex before he drifts too far offline. Two laps to go this time by, Tomo.
Gotta say, Mickey looks like he doesn't have the advantage anywhere but exiting turn number 5, which is, if you're gonna pick a spot to be good, that's the only spot I want to be good here. But Pilata has the car and has the draft. This is just gonna be, I don't know what's gonna happen. Any one of these top 4 could win it.
Pilata closes in turn 2 and has it down to less than a car length. And it looks like Caleb John Lavender and Peter Short are laying back a little bit. Do you think that's because the front 2 are driving away, or do you think they're building a gap to make a run at him in the last 2 laps here?
I think Pilata made a smart move not attacking into turn 8 that time, and that's what allowed Mickey and Pilata to pull that gap back out. You know, 2 laps ago, we saw them do that side-by-side through 8. That's what brought 3rd and 4th back into that battle. It was a 4-way battle for a lap, and then this lap, they didn't go side-by-side. So Pilata bought himself a little bit of that space by not attacking on the lap where it didn't matter as much. Now, I don't know that we'll see him attack this time, but he's got the breathing room to try.
And will you use the bumper? Is that an acceptable form of passing maneuver here, Tom, in these cars? I mean, I know you've gotten kind of the driver's side door from a couple drivers, but front to rear, is that generally acceptable or a no-no?
front to rear, no, definitely not. At least in my opinion. I know that kind of changes depending on who you're talking to, but especially in road course racing, front to rear contact, no. Side to side incidental contact, yeah, can be okay. You know, as long as both drivers were racing so hard that it just couldn't be avoided. Looking at the fourth place position, Peter Short, I'm sorry, he's getting racy too. So this may be a battle where we break away for a battle for first and a battle for third.
I think they've given up on catching those 2 leaders. They've gotten about second up the road, which might be a bit too much. But if these front 2 have contact, that could be the race for the win. So you never know. Down into turn 3, Mickey leads Pilata by 0.3 of a second. I think Andrew might leave a little bit of a gap so he can build a bigger run up towards turn 8. And then he'll just find out when he gets to turn 8 how much of a run he'll have and whether or not he can make that outside move work. But if I'm Pilata, I want to have the inside going into 8 because you have a bit more leeway and leverage there than you would on driver's left. Into turn 5, he's right on the rear bumper of Mickey, and the run on the back straight for the final time.
He uses all the tracking a little bit more, and I don't think there's any way in heck that Mickey is going to give him the inside for turn number 8, but Pilata's tested the outside line. He knows that if he really needs to force the issue, he might be able to make it work. There's that draft just now kicking in. They're already up in 6th gear. Pilata outside. This is a carbon copy, and then we're side by side for third as well. Final lap. Pilata goes for the outside. Nope, not going to make it happen. He's got 2 corners left.
Here comes Pilata to the back bumper of Eric Mickey. Does he have anything left? Maybe a dive into turn 10. Here he comes, blocked by the 88. He'll have it, maybe cross him over in the final corner. And to the line, Eric Mickey won at COTA Race 1. He'll win at Mosport Race 1. Behind him, Peter Short steals third in a last lap pass for a podium. Behind him, there's Kyle Herbst coming back into 5th place. Christian Gritzko to 6th. Carwile in 7th. And that will do it for the top 7 at least. And there's a bit more battling going on deeper in the field. Ryan Kristoff in the 46 and Dennis Barrett in the 83 to the final corner. This is for 12th.
Absolutely textbook defense from Eric Mickey there at the front. He defended on the entry to turn number 8, outbroke Pilata, and then put the car basically exactly where Pilata might be able to make any lunges to those last couple corners, just blocked any path that he could take. So super impressive run from the pole for Eric Mickey to lead every single lap of that 13-lap race.
Here's a look at your race results. Of course, Eric Mickey, again, 2 wins on the season so far, so he's going to extend his points lead as things go. He was actually concerned last week that he might get penalized for jumping the initial start at COTA. There was a line that you weren't supposed to accelerate before. He did it by mistake. He came to the race control and said, hey, I did this. I'm concerned about this. And no penalty was given as everyone kind of gets used to the rules here. But he will take home a 2nd win in 3 races so far in his Bombshell Racing Team car. Then the Eisentech Enterprises 022 comes home to finish out the podium. Gritzko in the Vantage Esports car 6th. Brian Spelski and Element Zero Motorsports will finish up in 9th. Darwin Meitz in the 72. His first round finishes 16th. Louis Alessi back in 18th. Benson Tai recovers for a 19th after his slide off into turn 1. The only driver that recorded a DNF in this race, Evan Adams in the 59 car, 5 laps down. All the other drivers were running. Francis Castillo-Romero and Nick Babin were 1 lap down at the finish. But Tom, we've finished 1 of each race. Now we got to do 1 more GS race and 1 more TCR. So I'm really looking forward to the 3rd race of the night.
I can't wait. Can we do it sooner? Can we do it now?
We can do it now. It's going to be a couple minutes before we get back in for race number 3 of the night, GS Race 2. Stick with us. We'll be right back. Welcome back live to the Radenso Sports Car Challenge round number 2 from Canadian Tire Motorsports Park. You're watching Sim TV. We got a special announcement about Friday, April 3rd. That is going to be at 7:30 p.m. on speed51.com. Sim TV will be producing a stream, a special event, the Open Wheels 250, which will include a field stacked with some of the best from IndyCar, Formula One, and IMSA and NHRA. It's going to be a blast. Make sure you join us at 7:30 at speed51.com. We're going to have drivers like Alexander Rossi, Will Power, Elio Castroneves, Juan Pablo Montoya, and all sorts of other drivers going to be in the field for that one. So make sure you join us Friday night, 7:30 p.m. We're here for race number 3 of the Radenso Sports Car Challenge round 2 from Canadian Tire Motorsports Park. It'll be GS Race 2. Our first race of the evening was won by Paul Darling, Tom. I expect race 3 to be potentially even more aggressive and more entertaining.
Yeah, it's pretty interesting to watch the two different styles of race that we just saw unfold. The GS race was a lot of side-by-side. We saw a lot of changes in position, some kind of argy-bargy here and there. And then in the TCR race, it was very nose to tail, very strategic. I think we saw drivers kind of plan out what they thought might be able to happen and try to make it happen. So I'll be very curious to see if that trend continues. We also are introducing a top 13 invert for both of these races. So that's going to nominate the driver that finished 13th in race number 1 all the way up to the pole for race number 2. And the drivers, the winners of race numbers 1 and 2. So that's Ken Hausiel back down to 13th off the green flag.
Yeah, so the invert's going to certainly introduce a little bit of chaos in the initial start, as it always seems to do. We do a couple different series with field inversions, and it always kind of leads to some chaos and entertainment at the very least. The drivers sometimes like it to give them a better shot at stealing a race win or a top 5, but about 1 minute and 40 seconds left in the warm-up period here. 30 cars strong again for the second race of the night. There are some other drivers I kind of wanted to keep an eye on, though. Daniel Nyman in the 48 car. He's been really, really solid in all the races so far, and with a bit of an invert to put him ahead of some of the other drivers that finished ahead of him in race 1 of the night, I think this 48 car is one of the drivers that could see a victory tonight.
And he's near as makes no difference fastest in practice right now. So he and Nick Johnston tied basically up at the front. The conditions pretty cool, much cooler than the race before, and that's going to bring a very different kind of driving style necessary for these cars. If you drive more on the edge and you are really, really fast when the car is hooked up, maybe Dan Nyman's like that. That's going to bring him into the mix differently than race number 1.
Yeah, and take a look at the current conditions right now. It's a little after 7 o'clock in the evening here in Bowmanville, Ontario. 74 degrees Fahrenheit in the air. Well, there's a car around there. 78 degrees on the racetrack. So wind 2 miles an hour out of the north, that won't be a factor tonight. But again, a cooler track surface, a bit more grip, a bit faster lap times, and you can be a little bit more aggressive. And also, I think we might see a little colder tire as the surface itself won't be keeping the tires quite as toasty. So we'll see how that factors in.
Yeah, I don't know that the GS field needs more aggressive. I think the TCR field could do a little more aggressive, but I don't know about the GS guys needing more aggressive, although I will expect to see that.
One of the drivers that went backwards, that we didn't expect to go backwards, was Mitch Welker in the 76, one of the Project 2 drivers, and again, a driver that really, really enjoys this racetrack, just like his teammate, Zach Buchanan. And he started up inside the top 5, drifted back to finish about 6th or 7th in the first race, and we'll see if he can improve on that in race 2. So warm-up is complete, and we'll head down to the racetrack here in just a moment to bring you your starting lineup for our 3rd out of 4 races this evening for the round 2 of the Radenso Sports Car Challenge. Again, thanks to our sponsors for being here and helping us bring this to you. Those are our 2 sponsors tonight. Radenso, from the most demanding driving enthusiast to the budget-conscious first-time buyer, Radenso Radar has a radar detector perfect for you and your driving style. And by Lazy Rocket, from small stickers to full vehicle liveries, Lazy Rocket Vinyl Produce specializes in die-cut vinyl and graphic design. You can visit their website along with Radenso's in the link in the video description. So, gridding up, and Lex Kurchek is going to be the one on the pole tonight in the 67 car, Tom. Paul Darling is rolling off, it says in 2nd place. I'm not sure if that is accurate or not. It looks to be, so I wonder if there was maybe a bit of an issue there with the field invert.
Yeah, I see Ken Hausiel's car in 3rd. Looks like it isn't quite accurate in the way it's inverted the field, but
obviously a new format for this week, kind of mucking things up a little bit, so unlikely that that'll happen again next week. But I guess for Guys like Darling and Johnson and House-Heel, they're going to enjoy their extra starting position here tonight. And Lex Kuracek gets the benefit of everything. He'll start on pole on driver's right, heading down to turn 1 when we come back around for lap 1.
Yeah, I have to wonder in the formatting if it only moved 13th up to the front. And it looks like everyone else is pretty much in finishing order from race number 1. So we've seen the drivers be able to pull an audible on reorganizing the grid. I don't know that the series director, Finian DeCuna, who's in this race, will be able to pull that off. But either way, we're in for a good race either way. We didn't need the invert to make it a good race.
No, it's certainly going to be entertaining regardless. I would say that.
And this will be a ton of fun to watch, especially with Lex Kuracek now getting to decide when the green flag flies and set the field, set the pace for the field.
All right, your starting lineup going to roll on the bottom of the screen. It's Kuracek and Paul Darling on that front row. Then Nicholas Johnson and Ken House-Heel. Those two fought viciously, tooth and nail, up until the white flag in race 1. Do you think they learned anything they can apply this time, or do you think it'll be more of the same?
I think we saw a lot of aggressive side-by-side move, action and position changing in race number 1, and I was really expecting more of what we saw in the TCR race, where they would run nose to tail, kind of work together, pick their spots, and maybe make them lunge on the last lap. Because of that long back straight here at CTMP, that tends to be the driving style that works really well. You don't usually see a whole lot of side-by-side for multiple corners extended at a time here, and they were doing that. So if anything, they may be able to reflect on that race and say, maybe I shouldn't have made that attack at that time. Maybe I shouldn't have made that move at that time. Although that flipped, Paul Darling made that aggressive move on lap 2 or 3, and he ended up being the winner.
So the rest of the field scrolling along the bottom of your screen, we mentioned the weather being cooler, but we've got just as many cars, 33 starting this one. Stephen Couliari, who finished last after an off in turn 1 in race 1, he'll start all the way back in 33rd position, so he's got some work to do tonight. Mitch Welker all the way back in 28th position for the start of this one. Francois Brou back there as well. Kevin Lee, Andrew Rasmussen both running into trouble in the first race, and they're going to get a new lease on life, but they're going to have a lot of cars to pass in this 13-lap event. The field working their way through turn 8, which was kind of the hot spot for passing attempts in race 1. We'll see if that's the same in race 2. The Porsche 911 pace car going to peel off here in just a moment and leave the field in the hands of Lex Kuracek driving that green number 67 car. Drivers can go when the green lights are on. There they go. Green flag flies, racing in GS Race 2 from Mosport. And already, I think that's Johnson taking a look to the inside. Going to take him 3 wide. Big crash in the background as they head down to turn 1.
Yeah, someone tank slapped coming off of turn number 10 and went back right across the field. We don't know how many cars it's taken out yet, but there's still 3 wide at the front going up into turn 2. Darling's going to take the lead up into the apex of turn number 2. Johnson's going to try to go with him as Kuracek is kind of struggling to get that car up to speed.
Oh, there's Barroso off track again. That's a long slide. He's going to maybe avoid the tire barrier. He will, but a chaotic start is going to lead Paul Darling in the lead. Behind him, side by side. More trouble behind him. Tony Chow around. Magnanoli might have gotten through it, and there's more trouble. Vinny DeCuna slow. And he's in the wall as well, so more trouble in turn 3, and it's carnage on the first lap here at Mosport.
And that's those cold tires. These cars just such a difficult car to drive in the cold conditions. We have more accidents happening up towards the entry to turn number 4, I think.
Yeah, there's that looks like to be, that's Montello in the 24 car. He's coming back on
the 37 car involved. Jackson Robillard in the 98 was also involved, as now Rasmussen goes around in the 11. So this is back towards the back of the field. The leader is now working their way up down into turn number 8 already, as Darling's kind of broken away from Johnson, but not out of striking distance. Causeel's gone through with them. I think we're going to see a replica of last race.
Yeah, really interesting to see how the field shakes out. Don't worry about the time at the top of the ticker. It's just estimating the laps that we'll complete here. It will be 13 laps, and we've just completed lap number 1. Darling leads the way, and Lex Kuracek, who started on pole, dropped to 8th in one go. We're going to look at the incident on the race start at the end of this race, so we'll take you back there for a replay at the conclusion of this race. Mitchell Welker snuck through all of that, and he started all the way back in 28th. He gained 14 spots in one lap. How about that?
Wow. Almost halfway up the field for him already in the 76 car. That's a really aggressive start and a really lucky start to get through as many incidents as we just had, to still have very little damage on that car from what I can tell. It's a little bent up, but he's made it through, running just in front of Kevin Lee, and I think that's Max Lupfer.
Yes, it's Lupfer in the 688. More trouble in the background. That's looks like Charles Boley. No, that is, trying to see, it is Charles Boley in the 63 who's gone around. And maybe a bit of contact there with another driver. Moving back up towards the front of the field, Paul Darling has Nicholas Johnson on his tail, and Johnson was probably the bigger threat in race 1, at least towards the end of the race, and now with Johnson hot on his heels this early, I think that 28 car's in perhaps the best spot.
Yeah, I would agree. I think these guys are also in a fortunate position that Ken Hausiel is back just barely within drafting range, so they can put together some quick laps. They may be able to pull away and just make it a 2-car battle. Kevin Lee looking racy on the back of Welker, shows the nose into 9. That's not going to happen.
And they might try to cross him up at the exit of turn 10, but Welker's going to hold just fine here. Right in front is Evan Schickel in the 33 car. He started in 21st. He's gained 8 spots to 13th and continues his climb. Buchanan up in 5th, has Riley Thompson right behind him. And Buchanan finished pretty okay in race 1 of the night. He had a very consistent series season so far, and I think if he could get a solid top 5, I think he'd walk out of here pretty happy, all things considered.
Yeah, we got Kurt Crum just kind of in no man's land in 4th, about equidistant between Ken Hausiel in 3rd and Buchanan in 5th. But Buchanan, Thompson, Nyman, Lapras, that's a fast group of people, as we're already dealing with lap traffic for Ken Hausiel there at Moss.
He'll get on through.
Kind of an awkward moment at turn-in.
Yeah. Never fun to catch a car down in Moss Corner. Francois Brew has had trouble. Let's go back and see what happened to him here. He had a hard impact. This is at the exit of turn 1. I think he's just going to maybe catch the grass. Nope, he's going to drive off into turn 2 and catch the grass on the inside. And wow, that was a big hit.
Yeah, head, nose in first. Car gets light right when you go to the brakes there at turn 2, and if the car floats just the wrong way, you start to counter steer because you think it's going to go away from you, and you end up getting grip right at the wrong time. You just shoot left, or shoot right, into that wall. But at the front, they're pretty strung out, meaning single file, but none of these guys are really out of striking distance of the car in front of them.
Oh no, he's good. I think he was just, the time in scoring had an issue there where they passed the driver in the pit, so he's all fine. Mark LeBance in the 92 is right in front of a battle for 13th. It's Welker on the inside. He's going to take some curb. Early apex zone. He struggled to keep it there. Oh no, Riley Thompson around at the exit of 1. Oh, that's big.
Huge for the championship. He's had 3 good finishes and now backed up into the wall. This has been a disastrous event for him at CTMP, crashing on the first corner of race 1 and just losing it on his own in race 2.
Yeah, here's a look. Yeah, he's just going to get down into turn 1 and just carries a bit too much speed. The car just steps out, maybe running a bit unstable of a setup here. He's just going to tap that wall, and that wing is going to snap off here at the end. That's a frustrating moment for Riley Thompson, back down in 18th place, and he'll have to come in to get that wing replaced. Otherwise, it's going to be a heck of a time to try and drive that car around.
Yeah, the nose of that car slammed down so hard at turn-in when he got on the brakes. I wonder if it got away from him right all the way that early, and it just took the entire corner for him to crash. But really unfortunate for the 56.
And a couple of cars side by side. There's Eisenman in 9th, Arroyo and Labance fighting for a top 10 position at the moment. And behind them, Schickel, Welker, and a whole host of other race cars here as they head towards 8.
Side by side for Labance and Schickel.
Walker caught some grass, and there's the 15 of Alex Barroso, who went off in turn 2 on lap 1. It's a 5-car fight. Kevin Lee's in here as well. Look at this battle. Here comes Lee up the inside of the 15.
Welker's taken advantage of Labance as the loser in that situation. He goes down 2 positions, and Labance and Schickel are actually co-drivers at times in real-life autocross events. So those guys very familiar with one another, side by side for a couple corners. And it's ultimately Welker who gets to get through. Now still side by side with Barroso now and Labance, still under attack. Lee goes up the inside of the number 2.
Oh, he gets there. Oh, the 15 almost got run out under the grass. Here comes Luke for in the 688. And he's going to dive up the outside for turn 3. The 92 on the inside, going to try to defend. He's up on top of the curb, though. Might have some side-by-side contact.
Yeah, Lufer makes it work around the outside, and Barroso is going to make it 3 wide, going up into turn number 4. He's got the run, but can he hold the outside? Big brakes, huge slide, and comes across the nose of Lufer into the turn-in for turn number 5. So great move by Barroso after that mistake early in the race, trying to recover every position he can. Still glued to the back of Kevin Lee. And they're working around lap traffic, which is Anthony Magnoli, I think.
Tal Sadiki's just had an issue. Let's go back and see what happened to him. It looks like he might have gone off as they headed down to turn 3. Here is a look. And see if there's any contact. No, he just gets off, and he's going to just drive in too hard and just misses the turn-in and clobbers the barrier. That was a hard hit.
Ooh. Yeah, tire wall just grabs him, and you see the left rear damage on the suspension, just going to make that car probably impossible to get back to the pit lane for repairs.
And working our way towards halfway, working lap 6, it's Darling and Johnson separated, 2 drivers up front, then Hausiel and Crum for 3rd, Buchanan in 5th, Nyman 6th, And a battle for 11th between Schickel and Welker. This one's not over yet.
Yeah, and we said that if Johnson and Darling had the opportunity to put in some fast laps and pull away from Hausiel, they could make it a 2-car race, and that's what's happened. They have a 2-second gap between the two of them. So instead of that 3-car battle we saw for race number 1, it's a 2-car battle at the front for race number 2. Welker still trying to get up around the 83 or 33 of Schickel.
A big correction for him. Mark Levance just went off in turn 2. He's back on course down in 18th position. We'll step back to that battle for 11th as they work their way through Moss Corner. And Kevin Lee was up there fighting for positions, but those two drivers, oh, around is Jeff Roy at the exit at 5B, and so is Lee in the 5. And another car, that's the 007, Anthony Magnanoli. He's around in turn 5B as well. So 3 drivers, almost like there's oil down there with how much they've been slipping and sliding.
Well, we saw that mistakes really made a big deal of how the results turned out for race number 1, I should say, COTA, round number 1. And there's just so much less forgiveness here. With
caught too much curb.
The lack of runoff, too much curb. But with the lack of runoff and the lack of distance to the walls, I think we're seeing that drivers are making similar mistakes, but the consequences are so much higher here at CTMP.
Yeah, again, you mentioned the Cayman's not taking curbs that great. That's a little bit too much, and it just starts bouncing, and the suspension just a tad too stiff, and it just, when your tires are off the ground, they're not doing you a whole lot of good. And that's what sent Jeff Arroyo around. He's down now in 25th position. So that was a very costly maneuver. Put him down 15 spots. And Stephen Cugliari, he started last. He's around on the front straightaway. And we haven't seen a crash up here yet other than the start of race 2, and he just gets in the grass and smacks it in the barrier. And
yeah, did something similar to Riley Thompson at the start of race number 1, but Riley couldn't go all the way out to the grass. He just got away from him.
Hausiel in the 23. Down at Moss.
Oh, he was running third.
Oh, that's big. There's a look. Back and see how he got himself in this situation. Just gets into 5A.
Inside curve a little bit. You see the car bounces and it just gets away from him on the entry. That's going to promote Kurt Crum up into the top 3 onto the podium. So it's a battle at the front. Darling and Johnson still not that tight, meaning they haven't had that crazy side-by-side stuff we saw in race number 1. So Johnson taking his time, but now Crum a lonely third.
Yeah, and that was big for Ken Hausiel. What causes that bouncing? I've seen that a bit in practice this week. Is that just too stiff of a rear, charging the corner too hard, or long line? I've seen that quite a bit. Is there something that the driver can avoid that with in the setup, or how you drive?
It may be a little bit, but I think it tends to trend more towards the modeling of the cars in iRacing, especially in the cooler conditions. The car seems to have a lot of grip, but the tire, I should say, seems to have a lot of grip. Welker into the wall, front straight.
That's heartbreaking for Welker.
Another driver who was on the move, and he had actually tracked out onto the front straight, was going straight, and then dipped a tire.
Yeah, here's another look. Same thing we saw with Cugliari a moment ago, and he almost had it saved, but the traction control formatting in this car has been a challenge in the past as we have a battle for the lead in GS, and Johnson takes a look at Darling into 5B, and he's on the outside, and has to throttle up and try again.
Yeah, 5 to go. We're working lap number 8 of 13. And again, in the cooler conditions, I think the tire just has a lot of grip, and it's exaggerated in this. As cool as it is out here, it's only 78 degrees on the track, and that tire just kind of flexes and bounces, whereas it doesn't show itself nearly as much in the heat. But now Johnson fully on the attack once again, side by side up into turn number 8. Is he going to go for it? Not this lap.
Man, he tried to keep it out
there. His nose in there just a little bit.
That's so hard. That corner is so off camera once you get off the apex, and he's going to slip back in behind. We saw this in the TCR race, though. That move really never worked. So we'll see if Johnson tries it again, but they're both in the grass on corner exit. They're coming to 5 laps to go.
And that's actually the way that Paul Darling got the lead in race number 1, if memory serves. He got the outside run across turn number 8 and was able to close the door on Hausiel for turn number 9. So it can be done, but it's really, really challenging. And these guys don't have a ton of opportunities left. And the longer they do that, another car in the wall, that is Cugliari again.
He's been sitting there for about a lap and a half, so there's probably a persistent yellow flag down there. Which is probably quite the irritation for some of the other drivers on course, but looks like he'll have to reset and head back to pit lane. So Drew Eisenman in the 7 car, he's gone wide. This looks to be the exit of 2 potentially. Here comes Lupfer to the outside. He'll take that spot. And
I was going to say, look who's lurking in the back of the frame. When we show the leaders, Kurt Crum is still there. So all it takes is a couple corners side by side, and we're going to have a 3-way battle for the lead once again. But down into turn number, is that 2? He just ran a little bit wide.
Yeah, a little bit too much and didn't get turned in quite in time. And that's a tricky corner because we saw one of the drivers, think it was, I'm trying to remember which driver it was, but someone turned in too early and actually caught the grass and spun out in race 1 tonight. So, if you miss it, you miss it. If you hit it wrong, you hit it wrong. I mean, there's really no in between. You either hit it or you don't. Coming now down to 4 laps to go. Darling and Johnson, 4/10 between them.
Darling puts in a really good lap and buys himself a couple car lengths. As the 68's gone around now, Tony Chalice says something about either the conditions or the excitement of race number 2. This field is a little bit of a mess here for race number 4, the Radenso Sports Car Challenge. Unfortunately, hard to keep up with what's going on with all the spins and accidents, but Darling and Johnson still close enough within striking distance. We don't know who's going to be the winner yet.
Hippity hoppity, your spin is my property, says Mosport, and you've seen a couple of cars go around down there. Cannot steal one of them. As Darling and Johnson continue to battle for the lead. This is one of the closest battles on the racetrack other than 21st. There's Andrew Rasmussen, Jeff Roy, and Finney Nakuna. All 3 of these drivers have gone around or crashed in some way in this race. And Nakuna nursing a fairly damaged 94 after some concrete contact in turn 3 on lap 1. But he's out wide again. There he goes. Oh, it's going to hit hard.
Keeps it rolling, never comes to a stop, so style points, but unfortunately he's going to drop back out outside of the top 25 with that incident in the 94 car.
And he'll be locked out of that battle for now, was battling for a top 20 position. Moving back forward, how about 9th place, Evan Schickel and Alex Barroso in the 33 and 15. See if the draft can bring this 15 right back into it. There's also Max Lupfer up there. He is 4th position. No, that's actually not Lupfer. That would be Kevin Zhu or Burke, I believe. Kevin Zhu in the 243, he's 1 lap down.
Yeah, a couple of those cars sporting that cool throwback livery to the old Porsche 917-30 Can-Am car.
I'm glad you knew that because I sure didn't.
Yeah, well, they all say number 3 real big on the side, but that's not the car number, so it's a little confusing when they all have the same livery. But back at the front, Carl Darling is doing a great job to actually keep a buffer between himself and Nick Johnston, and those two pulling away little by little over Kurt Crum. So I think it's going to stay a 2-car battle as we're working lap number 11 of 13. And Johnston seemed to have the pace all through race number 1, seemed to have the pace at the beginning of race number 2, but something in the later stages of this race, Paul Darling has found his footing. You see he runs all the way out to that curb and is squaring up turn number 5 to get a good run out. This is the closest that Johnson's been over the last couple laps, so we may see this battle kind of come back together. And the Cayman doesn't draft all that well until well into 5th gear, so these guys probably aren't feeling much draft yet. It's going to be closer to this second crest as they come over there. That's kind of considered turn number 7. That's where the draft is now starting to help Johnson come up towards turn number 8. They're going to get on the brakes and sweep one more time with 2 to go this time as they cross the start-finish line.
I was going to mention that it seemed like Johnson really, was kind of laying back, or he was getting kind of driven away from by Paul Darling, but now the time is now. We got 2 laps to go, and he is now back to the bumper of this 155. So I don't think he's shown his hand quite yet. We've got about 6-7 kilometers of racetrack left, and he's now close to the leader. We've got a spin. Talasarik is around in turn 2, and the leaders are actually about to approach this accident zone, so they got to be wary of the caution flag.
Sadiq rejoining from driver's left. There's more than one left car in the way of this lead battle, so hopefully the drivers are heads up enough to realize that they're not going to make this race at this point for themselves, so make sure they don't ruin it for others. Sadiq doing a great job. There you go. Brake lights, gets out of the way.
Johnson close, though. Is he going to dive into 5? Looks like he thought about it, but Darling kind of covered. Now up into 5B, going to stick the nose in there and backs out again. Again, that 5B pass, Tom, I don't think you can get a car in there without causing a wreck here, and that would certainly be a penalty for avoidable contact.
Yeah, and Johnson's doing an amazing job just filling the mirrors through that section of other drivers, and he actually threw somebody off in race number 1 doing that. It's really hard to get the car slowed for turn number 5 and also get offline to then make it look like you're going to make a pass or set yourself up potentially to take advantage of that pass. But Johnson now is back on the attack, laid back a couple of laps, look all up underneath the back end of that number 155. They're going to be white flag this time by, sweeping through turn number 9.
Here he comes up the inside to 10. Dive up into turn 10, and he's going to be alongside, and the drag race down as the white flag flies. Darling and Johnson, and looks like Darling's re-cleared him, but Johnson's still going to try to stick the nose in turn 1. He does. Oh, that's tight, down in 1.
Oh, yeah, Darling could have shut the door, but he didn't know that, and he didn't. So now Johnson tucks back in finally after a couple corners side by side.
Oh, that was dicey for a moment. Running out of time, running out of laps. And Johnson needs to make this move work, but you mentioned filling the mirrors. I think one of the things Johnson's done really well is getting out of the mirrors as well, because it makes Darling look around. I mean, you have to trust your mirrors, but if you get out of all those mirrors, then he doesn't know where you are and has to leave you space to avoid a penalty if he were to turn in on you. So there's a lot going on for not only Johnson, but for Darling as well.
Yeah, you see Johnson moving around a lot, even down the straightaways, and that's basically making him unpredictable for where Darling might think he might go. And those guys side by side for a couple corners. Kurt Crum made up about a second on him. I think he's still out of striking distance for that third place spot, but one more opportunity for Johnson to try to make something work through turns 8, 9, and 10.
Pretty far back. Yeah, I don't think he can close that, but he's certainly going to try. 2 more corners left to make that 3, 8, 9, and 10. A big dive late on the brakes for the 28. Here he comes. He's going to have one more opportunity into 9. Stick the nose up the inside. Darling gives him space. Oh, almost contact. Try to cross him over in the final corner. Checkered flag. Darling Johnson drag race to the line. Who's going to get there first? It'll be Darling by a nose. He'll sweep the GS races from Mosport.
Man, a valiant effort from the 28, but not able to get it done. And now we're looking back at this is the battle for 9th, 8th. Barroso, Kurchek, and Schickel.
And Kurchek dives in there, can't quite get there in time. It'll be Barroso, Kurchek, and Schickel at the line. Round out your top 10. And there's Lupfer coming back in 11th place. A little bit deeper, Mark LeBance and Riley Thompson. This is for 14th place. Thompson got a great run. He's loose out of the final corner. Wow, look at him drive that car. Deeper in the field, even still. Tony Chow Montello way wide in turn 8, trying to set up a pass in the final corner. Looks like he will not be able to, but as Paul Darling at the end of it all, what a night for him to sweep both GS races here from Mosport. And he had to work hard to get it done.
I was going to say a dominant performance, really, and to win from the front in both of these races, to basically fend off such incredible attacks from Ken Hausiel and Nick Johnston. There's just a really strong performance from Paul Darling in the 155. And what'll be really interesting is we've basically had 2 completely different personalities on tracks, and we've seen different drivers rise to the top. Sure, there's a couple of same names kind of fighting for these podium positions, but Circuit of the Americas and Canadian Tire Motorsports Park, very different personalities. We have 6 more races at 6 different tracks left in this season, so we're seeing kind of strengths and weaknesses of different drivers show here. It's really cool to see.
We're going to let the results scroll through. Before we go and bring you TCR Race 2, we're going to go back to lap 1 and show you the incident that happened before the start-finish line that kind of wadded up a bunch of cars. I just want to let the results finish scrolling on through for the last couple starters. I will jump back here and try to figure this out, Tom, because this was certainly not something you want to see as an accident before you get to that start line, but drivers trying to be aggressive and on cold tires and things, that just sometimes you end up with that situation.
Yeah, and with the front straight here at Canadian Tire Motorsports Park being so short, the green flag basically comes out, and that looks like it's the Martini car. I think that's car number 183.
Let's go back. It could have been.
But you see, the green flag basically comes out when the leader is at the apex of turn number 10, and that means there are still cars back in turn number 9 and even exiting 8. There's the 22 car.
Sadiq in the 163. That's Martel. That's who started off. And then Robillard gets into the back of him, sets it off. Oh.
Yeah, just got up on the curb. You saw that bouncy. Got in the inside wall just like Riley Thompson did in the race number 1, but then shot back across the track in front of everybody and took out a couple cars with him. Robillard also got a big slide, checks up, spins him across the road.
Yeah, there's
Montello. Was going there
Montello.
anyway, so Robillard didn't really do that.
Oh, and Montello just got through, and then the clobber him. That is the 31 car, Eric Pennington, that didn't get through. Oh boy, but that was certainly a mess at the initial start. Then we got down a little bit later in the lap and there was more trouble. Let's go back a little bit later and find, I know Vinny DeCuna was also involved in something. Let's go down.
There was an incident in turn 3, so a couple corners later, we're going to have a car off about mid-pack, and then DeCuna's going to get collected in that.
So there's Barroso coming back on course, but there you hear him going around. Okay, the 007 of Megan Noli, I think, was the driver that might have been one of the drivers that started this. No, it wasn't. It was actually the 37 of Curtis Larod and the 68 being driven tonight by, looks like the 68 was, trying to look down the order, Tony Chow, and then that's where all the contact happened in turn 3. So, wow, a big impact there, and Robillard flies in here, and DeCuna unsighted as well. So, bunch more accidents throughout the rest of the field, but we got to step away to get loaded up for the final race of the evening. We'll be back in just a couple minutes. Stay with us.
Racing fans in Canada, the exciting highlight of the season is the Players 200 race at Mosport, bringing drivers and cars of international caliber to compete for the Players Cup and $10,000 in
Racetracks used to be built with the land, not on top of it.
The race marshals round the track have a heavy responsibility. Their quick actions can prevent unnecessary pileups.
They used to flow. They used to demand respect and bravery. Some racetracks have withstood the test of time, despite changing attitudes on safety and design.
The ticket sellers, the night's work is just beginning. Right through the night, race fans from hundreds of miles around journey to Mosport Park to set up camp, to meet old friends from last year, and to make this race meeting into the most memorable
Since
one of the
1961,
year.
this stretch of asphalt has remained largely unchanged. If this pavement could speak, the stories it would tell. This is the first permanent motor racing facility in Canada, and they call it Mosport. Canadian Tire Motorsport Park is the site of round 2 of the 2020 Radenso Sports Car Challenge. We've completed 3 of 4 races tonight, both in the GS category and 1 of 2 in the TCR category. Welcome back for the final race of the evening, a 13-lap event with the TCR class cars. Tom, we've seen wild racing. Race 2 in GS was a bloodbath out there. Are we expecting something similar in TCR or something a little calmer like we saw in race 1?
Well, I sure hope not, because race 2 in GS was definitely the negative side of Wild. And race 1 in TCR was very, very clean, very tame. So even if the aggression ramps up a little bit here for race 2 in TCR, I think we'll still see a fairly clean race. And this will be a little bit less chaotic in theory, because I guess I should say we're inverting the top 6 for race number 2 here. And actually we only inverted one car in race number 1 in GS, and that had nothing to do with the chaos. So this race has the makings to be a little bit more exciting, promoting Christian Grisco, who finished 6th in race number 1, all the way up into the pole position.
Heading back down to the racetrack here, and our weather conditions, again, a little bit cooler than we saw in race 1, or race 1 for the TCR cars tonight. 78 degrees on the surface, 74 in the air. It's a beautiful evening here in Bowmanville, Ontario. 1 minute left in the warm-up here. We've got about 25 cars lined up for the second event, and one of the drivers I think we have to keep an eye on is Pilata in the 14. He was really, really strong in the first race of the night, and I think he's going to be pretty hard to beat in race 2.
Yeah, you saw he just hounded Eric Mickey the entire time for race number 1, and he's going to start 5th in this race. Again, we're inverting the top 6 cars, so Pilata out of 2nd place in race 1 is going to start 6th. Another guy to keep an eye on for me is the 999 of Caleb John Lavender. He had the fastest lap of race number 1 and lost the 3rd position in the very last corner to Peter Short with an outside pass by Short on Lavender. So Lavender now starting 3rd. He's going to have the inside of the 2nd row coming on to the green flag, just behind Christian Gritzko and Kyle Herbst. So that 999 could be a contender for the win here in this race, just based on his performance in race number 1 and maybe having a little bit of a fire underneath of him getting jumped off the podium in that last corner.
Oh, beautiful evening here in Mosport, and we're ready for our final race of the evening. Again, 13 laps with 25 Audi RS3 TCR cars, and this 10-turn road course is the site of our second round. Of course, we have more of this series coming to you. There are 8 rounds total in 2020 in the spring part here, as everyone's kind of stuck at home right now. The only thing really to watch is esports at the moment, with all the other sports shut down. So it's a pleasure for me to bring this to you. And we thank Tom O'Gorman for joining us here in the booth tonight as we head down to the racetrack for our gridding process. And it looks like, to my untrained eye, that the gridding process is mostly, is this right or not? Darwin Mites on pole, Andrew Chow, Tyler Jones. Again, there was a slight error on the iRacing side setting up for our second GS race. Looks like something else has happened in this race. Again, we have to kind of sort things out as the season goes on and figure out the intricacies of this field inversion situation.
So are we inverting 6 or 16? Because that would actually, Darwin Mintz was 16th, and that would be...
Yeah, it looks like we inverted, 16. So Pilata, yeah, so that was 16 positions rather than 6, but Eric Mickey will be all the way back in 16th position, and the starting lineup will roll along the bottom of your screen. Prepare for our second and final TCR race of the evening.
Yeah, that makes things very interesting. So Darwin Mentz on the pole with Andrew Chow on the outside of the front row. Tyler Jones, who had some issues in race number 1, actually ended up in the wall, I believe, at one point. Will start way up towards the front. And then another guy to keep an eye on is Dennis Barrett, who, as we identified early in the race number 1, as a normal front runner in the WDCR region league. He's going to start up in 4th with Ryan Kristoff, Will Robbins, and that's going to put those guys to watch way back at the back in 13th, 14th, 15th, and 16th. You're looking at them now, Andrew Pilata, Eric Mickey. That's going to make things way more interesting than it would have been if they were only on the 3rd row.
Yeah, they're going to have a lot of cars to go through. I'm not even sure that they can get through all those cars. They're certainly going to have a lot on their plates here as we follow the field down with the Turn 2 drone camera. And the drivers up at the front, they're breathing a sigh of relief because they have a lot of positions between them and the drivers that were competitive in the first race. So a little bit of time before they have to run for their lives. So we'll head down towards Moss Corner. Again, this has been the trouble spot on the opening lap, or at least it was for the first race of these guys tonight. And what can they learn from that, Tomo? I mean, cold tires, cold brakes, the combination of the two, or just over-aggression?
I think it's just over-aggression, and this corner is so challenging. Right there is a blind turn in. You're dropping down about 6 stories, and as soon as you get on the brakes, you're in a heavy compression, and then you're rising back up about 4 stories. Right there, you're on the brakes, and then you're trail braking all the way through this blind corner that's also off camber and decreasing radius. So it's kind of like all of the most challenging things in motorsports thrown into a blender and jumbled up. into one corner, and that's Moss Corner. So you just got to be really careful. And sometimes you think you are being careful, and you get the ABS at the wrong time. You get that compression just wrong, and it shoots you off the outside. But I'm excited to see top 16 inverts. Last week Eric Mickey won race 1, and the top 18 was inverted, and he made it all the way back up to 3rd. So it is possible to come up through the field, but Canadian Tire Motorsports Park is much harder to pass at than COTA.
Yeah, I think the key difference between Mosport and COTA is how many hard braking zones there are. You mentioned how fast this place is, how much speed you carry. At COTA, you carry a lot of speed through the first sector, but then it's a lot of stop and start, and it gives you passing opportunities. But here, it's a very flowing racetrack. You have to really get up on the wheel and battle side by side through high downforce corners, so it's certainly a pleasure to watch, but makes it trickier for the drivers. All right, time to go racing. 13 laps on tap for this one tonight, the final race of round 2 of the 2020 Radenso Sports Car Challenge. And the green flag is out. Green flag flies, racing at Mosport for the final time tonight. Darwin Meitz in the 72, Andrew Chow on the outside lane as they run down to turn 1.
3 wide for Brad Adams into turn number 1 with Ryan Carlisle in another car.
They're all off. Big crash. Horrible crash. Car upside down and bodywork flying everywhere. More trouble in the middle of the field, and it's a roadblock.
Pilata's collected, Peter Short's collected, a whole bunch of cars involved, almost over half the field. That's a NASCAR-style big one right there. There's Ryan Carlisle stuck in the wall. Pilata's not going anywhere. Where is Mickey? Did he make it through? Peter Short definitely collected in it.
Eric Mickey made it up to 11th, and there's another car off. That's the 89 of Kyle Herbst. He's gone off in turn number 3. Mickey's got a little bit of damage, but I think he's made it through okay. But that just took out so many cars. There was about half the field involved in that in one way or the other.
Yeah, this is like Talladega level stuff right there. So at the front, Mentz gets a clean breakaway, and none of that really affected the front couple rows. It'd be interesting to see Mickey he's being scored 10th right now on my screen with a lot of damage on that car. So if 10th on back out of 28 cars were affected, this race is very thinned out at this point. Brad Adams tagged onto the back in 11th. A lot of damage on that car as well.
Michael Shea in the 78 car, Ryan Christoph up to P5. 2 seconds of a gap between Meitz and Andrew Chow in the 25 in second place, and a big wad of cars between turns 1 and turn 3, and so few cars popped out the other side of that. And if this race was longer, we would have a full course yellow to reset in the field and try that again, but unfortunately race is too short for that really to be effective, and we're going to have to just continue running with it right now. So I think the 72 bombshell car, he is free and clear. He's just going to try to drive away as best he can.
Yeah, but in theory, he's the slowest of everybody. He finished the worst of everybody in this top group. And what's kind of cool, I guess, at this point, we have an entirely different cast of characters in the top 10. Everybody except Christian Gritzko, who finished 6th in race 1. He's currently running in 7th for race number 2 in that Vantage Esports car. So of all the drivers from race number 1, he's probably got the best opportunity for performance in this race, but he's got a lot of cars to drive through.
It's Caleb John Lavender in the 999 on Ryan Christoph in the 46, and Christoph, of course, has experience in Grid Life Touring Cup and also runs the SCCA runoffs every year, so he's a very talented driver, currently sitting in 5th place. We'll see if he can climb his way up. This is a great opportunity for him to snag a good finish tonight.
Yeah, currently running 5th, chasing down Michael Shea, but he's got Lavender, and I miss Lavender in that running because that car is a little subtle, but Lavender and Gritzko, I think, are the 2 cars to watch in this, the 999 and that 19 car. I was taking a look at Michael Shea in the 78, another Wawa car on track.
Ken Ausil runs the Wawa car in the Grand Sport category, Shea in TCR. Meitz continues to stretch that lead out 2.1 seconds, but this is a great battle for 4th. Shea, Christoph, Lavender, Gritzko, and they're side by side on the front straight. Now here comes Christoph on the outside of Shea down in turn 1.
Yeah, Christoph got up underneath the back end of the 78 and loosened him up coming through the apex in turn number 10, and then capitalizes on it. Goes around the outside of turn number 1. Ooh, Lavender, a big tank slap, but keeps his foot in it and saves it. And now it's Shea back down 2 positions, trying to get around, Gritzko trying to get around him now. Down into turn 3.
Yeah, Gritzko on the attack to the inside, gets all the way up on the curb, 2 tires up, contact, and around goes Shea and Gritzko. They're going to tag Carlisle, send him sliding off course as well. And there's Eric Mickey in the 88 car up the outside. He's going to take 3 cars in one corner.
Brad Adams trying to go through too, and you see the beauty of front-wheel drive cars. They all put their foot down and pulled the noses in the right direction, so no huge incident with that one, but definitely a little bit unnecessary, little awkward moments there. And now, is that Eric Mickey up into 6th? It is. The 88 Eric Mickey somehow all the way up into 6th, so the damage on that car, not that bad.
Yeah, he's been flying. He's got Ryan Carwile making a pass to the outside, so either way, Carwile seems to have a little bit better straight speed or got a better run. But even if Eric Mickey could get a top 10, that would certainly be a good race compared to some of the other drivers he was battling in the points. They're going to be way down the order after being involved in opening lap incidents.
Yeah, and he's been pretty close to a perfect season, so he's gotten a big lead up to this point anyway. Ooh, Lavender on Christoph.
On the front straightaway drag race here to conclude lap number 3, and Lavender's got the nose in for turn 1. Christoph's going to drive in hard and head for the apex. He gets there before Lavender can fill the nose, and they'll continue their fight.
And they're now dogging, that is Tyler Jones, still holding down third after starting there. So the big mover so far is Caleb John Lavender, starting 13th and is now up to 5th.
And Christoph's a little bit defensive off into 3. Is there going to be a push or a shove? Looks like Lavender wants to lean on him, and Christoph goes a little bit wide at the exit of 3.
Dropping down into turn 4, you see just here when the wheel goes straight, they're heavy on the brakes, and they're
Christoph's out of control.
At this guy, Christoph sideways.
And cars in front of him.
And so is Tony Chow is also off the road and from second place.
Wow, man, this is exciting stuff. Now these drivers using every inch of the racetrack in a full drift in these cars, and now we got a 4-way fight for second.
Sorry, that was Andrew Chow going off the road by himself from second place. So now we've got a pair of battles for second and fourth. Lavender is going to drive up the inside and around Christoph.
And Tyler Jones up the inside of Chow into turn 8. He's got position and the spot. And behind Christian Gritzko and Brad Adams, they've traded positions for 8th place. And there's Michael Shea back there as well. And Adams, all the damage that he's got on the nose of that car, that cannot be a whole lot of fun to drive right now.
No, it's probably not hurting him too bad until he gets out of turn number 5 all the way down to turn number 8. That big, long uphill back straight. That car is not happy with that dirty air. If he's not drafting somebody, he's going to be hurting. But now Lavender up into the 3rd position. A huge run for the 999 car. 13th to 3rd in just a matter of 5 laps. And now he's looking for second up the inside of the 29 on the exit of turn number 2.
He's putting on a show for sure. Here he comes to the outside in turn number 3. Going to try to maybe cross over this 29 at Tyler Jones. He's going to build up a run, but this is a tricky place to pass on the outside of turn 4. He might take a look here, might wait till Moss corner. Now to driver's left. Oh, that was tight. Slam the door shot does Tyler Jones.
Oh, yeah, big block from the 29. And now look at this. Chow trying to get up the inside, which now becomes the outside for turn number 5. Lavender is under attack all of a sudden. The 4-way battle for second place, and if they're not careful, they're going to get Carwile and Mickey up there too.
Yeah, the Bombshell 72 has driven away 5.7 seconds, and that is pretty much safe from getting caught if he doesn't make a mistake. So I think he's in a great spot right now as the battle is still for second. They looked 3 wide for a moment as they were passing a lap car, and it's John Lavender and Jones for second into 8.
Lavender maybe clears the front end of Chow. He does, so they're still going to go. Bumps him into turn number 2. The 29 car gets a big bump from behind from Lavender at turn number 9. Runs wide out of turn 10. Going to get a push from the back. Does the 999 up the inside for turn number 1. Oh, it's so tight.
Oh, there's a little bit of contact. 29 gets the hand showed to him as he gets kind of shoved up by Chow as well, getting elbows out here. And we're not even halfway through this race, already pushing and shoving.
And sure enough, just that fast, Carwile and Mickey are in this battle. So we have a 6-way battle for second place right now. Lavender, I suspect, may start to drive away, but look at this. Christoph trying to get around the outside, inside. Big contact for second, for third.
Chow just drove into the back of Tyler Jones, and Jones was not phased at all. He kept that wheel straight and the foot planted and pulled the car out of its line. Here's Christoph to the inside, and take a look at Andrew Chow down to the Moss.
Side by side for Carwile and Mickey at the back of your frame, the blue of the front end of that car. That is the championship leader. Somehow made it through all of that chaos from 16th all the way up now into the 7th spot.
They continue to fight down the back straightaway. It looks like John Lavender's gotten free and clear. Now we'll see if he can catch Darwin Mites in that Bombshell car. It's a 6, almost 7-second gap. That's a really tall task considering the pace that Mites is running, 125.8. But it's not impossible, I wouldn't say, so we'll keep our eyes out for that. Meanwhile, for third, Tyler Jones and Andrew Chow battling for position, maybe a crossover into 10.
That's a proper 6-car battle at this point. This is for third. Jones, Chow, Christoph, Carwile, Mickey, and Gritzko is there. Brad Adams isn't too far away either, so we have most of the top 10 in your frame right there, streaming through, starting lap number 7, trying to get onto the podium. Huge rotation for Tony Chow on the entry to turn number 1. runs it wide, but keeps it under control. 2 off for Gritzko at the back.
Gritzko a little bit wide. Look at Chow drive in deep into the corner again. No damage on that car. I thought he drilled the back of Tyler Jones last time. Maybe there wasn't as much contact as we originally thought, but Christoph now taking a look to the inside lane, and now again the 25 contact with Jones sends him for a slide.
Really touch.
These guys' elbows out again. They're not afraid to use the bumpers, and they've been using them for the last couple laps as we cross halfway.
Honestly, they're being pretty courteous about that. No one was a bully and just drove through. We saw brake lights checking up. Everybody was pretty courteous about the fact that there was a car sideways halfway across the track. But Andrew Chow makes his way up into third with that big punt to the back of the 29 going into turn 3. Ryan Christoph took advantage of it as well. Carwile, Gritzko, and Mickey are at the back. And actually, Gritzko got around Mickey, so Mickey's back down into 8th position. Brad Adams still clinging onto the back of that battle in the red, beat up number 21.
I was going to say, if that was courteous, I don't want to see what incourteous is, because that was pretty wild down there. Leaning on each other, pushing and shoving, but here's Carwile and Tyler Jones. Now Jones started this race in 3rd position. He's starting to lose spots now with some of the faster drivers who are making their way up through the order. Here's Carwile again into 10, sits in behind. He's got Gritzko putting pressure on him as well.
Oh, it's a whole pack of cars all the way all the way through turn number 10, and side by side for Carwile and Jones. Also for Christoph and Chow, but Christoph thinks better of it. Carwile's trying to muscle his way through, and can Gritzko and Mickey go with him? Outside of turn 2 is a scary place to be for Carwile. Not a lot of runoff.
And watching from on board, Christian Gritzko as he sees the hole open to the inside of the 29. Carwile breaks early. Look at the 29 just drive up the outside to try to carry some speed there. What an epic maneuver to get a spot back from Carwile.
Something happened with the 25. He was going really slow between turns 2 and 3, which allowed Christoph now up onto the podium, up underneath the back end of Lavender. So we're back up battling for second somehow. This gaggle, look at the back of this. Brad Adams is side by side with Kyle Herbst, who has somehow come out of nowhere to gain 2 positions in turn 4. You don't do that at Canadian Tire Motorsports Park, but Eric Mickey is starting to fall backwards again.
They widened this track out to 42 feet in 2001. Tom, I think they need to widen it some more because we're using every inch of it right now. 3 wide with the 88 in the grass on the back straight, trying to make some space.
Man, and Brad Adams holding his own after going side by side with Kyle Herbst. Gets the run, and he's going to try to shut the door going into turn 8. Nope, not going to happen. Herbst with a commanding move around the outside, and this is now putting him up into 7th position, which he was not even on our radar a lap ago. So this is a lot of movement on that lap. Lap number 9 is one to go back and rewatch. But Christoph up into 2nd, Lavender to 3rd, Jones to 4th, Carwile, Gritzko, Herbst, Adams, and Mickey all in that one shot, and that's the running order 2nd through 9th.
Yeah, Ryan Christoph got to 2nd because John Lavender made a huge mistake. He lost 3 seconds last lap, so all that time that he had started to make up in Darwin Lights went away, and Christoph's got P2 for now. There's Gritzko right in front of Kyle Herbst, and that 89 car was fast in race 1, and he wants his spots back. He went off on turn 3 on lap 1, and he's looking aggressive on the back of that Vantage Esports number 19.
And even with the mistake, he started 12th and he's up to 7th, so he's still moved up quite a few positions. You have to imagine he'd be battling potentially up for the podium positions or higher.
Oh, sideways.
Put down.
And he'll save it. Front-wheel drive save time. You just put your pedal to the floor and it straightens right back out. They got to love that. Here's 2nd.
Side by side once again for Lavender and Christoph, and you said Lavender had a big mistake, and I have to imagine that's what caused that entire chaotic lap number 8 to happen. But Lavender trying to get that spot back from Christoph. Jones has had a moment to breathe as he was the center of attention for a lap or 2.
And here comes Lavender to the outside at 8. Crossover back into turn 9. But this is all happening 10.5 seconds behind a bombshell 72. I think they'd completely given up on any chance of catching him. How about Tyler Jones and Ryan Carwile going at it again for 4th? Carwile tucks back in line. Actually disappears. I wonder if he's had an issue. Drops off the timing and scoring. And looks like he is gone. So Carwile drops out of the fight and moves everybody behind him up a spot. Oh, he's back. He's back in P5. So whatever issue he had, he's back in. Here's John Lavender back on Christoph for 2nd.
what's fascinating is none of these guys have the commanding pace to gain a position and then drive away. We saw Lavender do it just a little bit, and then he made that mistake, and it's keeping him in this battle. But basically, Christoph, Jones, Carlisle, Gritzko, Herbst, Adams, Mickey, none of those guys have been able to take a position and drive away and continue to gain positions. This has been ebbing and flowing for laps now. And there's that big train of cars sweeping through Moss Corner up onto the big long back straight.
Look at that gaggle. Looks like they're on the pace laps right now, except twice as fast. And a long string of cars from second all the way back to, I think that's Elias Roman at the tail of that in 10th place in the 99. It goes one farther back than that. Michael Shea in the 78.
Yeah, he's close enough. I knew you would not believe this is lap 10 of 13. You'd think it's lap 1. Side by side, once again, Lavender trying to sweep the outside around Christoph, and he's going to have the position this time for turn number 9. I think he's got it, but Christoph holds the outside. No, they're still side by side for turn number 10. And watch what this does to everybody else. We're going to have some crazy action all the way through this pack now. Jones trying to get back up onto the podium.
Lavender down into turn 1. Christoph holds on to second place for now. Gritzko all the way down on the curb, right against that inside wall through turn 1, using every inch of the racetrack. Lavender throws a bit of a defensive move back to driver's right on Tyler Jones. Carlisle tucks in behind in 5th.
One of the only moments these guys have all been in the same tire tracks nose to tail for just a corner or two. Carlisle underneath the 29 rear bumper. Jones is clinging onto that 4th spot.
They're trying to get overlap with the stubby nose of this car. It doesn't mean they can't get it up in there. They can get it close, but not quite enough. They need to be driving Astons or something so they have a bit more room to grab some overlap.
There you go. Mickey at the back of this frame. I'm pretty impressed. Kyle Herbst is the only driver who's been able to consistently pick up positions without losing them again. And it's telling how intense this is, because Eric Mickey was up to 6th at one point. He's back to 9th. So he's not even, he's been the commanding TCR driver this entire season, and not even he can gain positions and hold them.
Darwin Mice just went by your screen, and it's a whole 11 seconds back to the battle for P2. Christoph Lavender side by side into 8 again. And there's Herbst on Carlisle right on the rear bumper, and the 29 to Tyler Jones holding up the 71. Hole opens for Herbst up the inside for turn 9. A little bit of side-by-side contact. Carlisle sees a hole, and he won't dive into it for 10.
And Herbst is going to make the outside work, barely door to door once again. And Mickey actually made a pass on Adams in the background, so he's up one position. Now Gritzko picks Carlisle to follow into the corner. They're still side by side with Herbst in the Sour Patch car. And Herbst will finally gain advantage up into turn number 2. I have to imagine he'll be able to close the door this time. Yes, does so. Gritzko goes with him, though. Side by side with Carlisle.
So you have to be opportunistic, and that's what Gritzko has been. Well, these guys were fighting, a little bit of contact. He's going to go sliding in turn 3, and around he goes.
They were doing such a great job of keeping that whole battle with those 10 cars clean, and that's the first time it's gone.
Well, it's another 5 or 6 seconds back to the next group of cars. There's Brad Adams and Elias Roman. This is for 8th place, and just up the road again. And now they've strung out a little bit with 2 laps left in this event, but I don't think we're done seeing these guys fight yet. Car off the background, Ryan Carlisle in the dirt at the exit of 5B.
Yeah, now they're starting to drop like flies with 2 to go, so this battle is thinning out. We're from 9 cars down to 7. Look at Herbst. He was able to make a pass the last lap on Carlisle. This time he's got Jones in his sights. They're going to go side by side just a little bit up into turn number 8. Herbst is going to try to go deep on the brakes.
There he goes.
There, you see the lunge.
Trying to hold even, and it looks like the 29 is actually going to lift and give him the spot, so move Herbst up into 4th place. And you see just in front of them, Christoph and John Lavender. White flag is in the air for Darwin Mites. He's already through turn 1. Christoph is just crossing the start-finish line now. He's got 2nd place, Lavender 3rd, Herbst 4th, Tyler Jones 5th. And how about the battle for 7th place? Elias Roman and Brad Adams nose to tail.
Yeah, Roman's picked up a couple spots in the last couple laps, and now that Brad Adams has not been able to run nose to tail in that battle, I have to imagine that damaged car is struggling, although Roman's car is not exactly clean. Very impressed with Herbst in this race. He recovered from a first lap incident to come all the way back up into 4th in that Sour Patch car. And Kyle Herbst, very little track experience, mostly an autocrosser, which is basically a time trial. And for him to demonstrate this racecraft that he's shown to climb back through this field against such a strong group of drivers, super impressive stuff.
Oh, he's off! Herbst is off!
Oh! commentator's curse. I'm so sorry, Kyle. He drives right off the track while we're talking about him. He's going to drop all the way to the back behind Shea, which is 12th position.
That's heartbreaking. Heartbreaking for him. I don't think we're done with second yet, though. While this is going on, Darwin Mites is going through the last two or three corners. From the drop of the green flag, he made it through and will drive away. Checkered flag waves for Mites, and he'll take home the race 2 victory in Grand Sport. Meanwhile, for second, Christoph and John Lavender. One more corner for these two. Christoph back to driver's left. Lavender sees the hole open on driver's right. Here he comes up the inside, and Christoph defends. Well done as they run back to the checkers. It'll be Christoph P2 and Lavender P3.
Yeah, Lavender tried it. He moved him all the way through the braking zone. You saw Christoph was on the brakes well past the apex trying to get that car slowed down, but it wasn't going to happen for Lavender, and that means a bombshell sweep between Mites and Mickey
for
CTMP.
25th to 13th, and Evan Adams has not had a great start to the season, but that is a phenomenal run for him, and he'll come home about a 10th behind Christian Gritzko in the number 19, so great job by Evan Adams here, but it was Mites at the end of the day, the bombshell car, that got it done. What a race for second. He just drove off into the distance in the 72, but everybody else, they had quite the entertaining time battling with everybody else.
Yeah, man, that's such a blast to watch. It'd be interesting to see the start of. Oh, going to do some reverse donuts.
I love these.
Be curious to see at the start just what happened on that outside row that basically half the field ended up off the track in turn 1 and came back across, because that was chaos. But
let's show results first, then we'll jump back and take a look at the replay here. But Darwin Mites in the 72, then Christoph, Caleb John Lavender, Eric Mickey, Tyler Jones, the rest of your top 5. Then Elias Roman, Brad Adams, Shea, Herbst, and Carwile, the rest of your top 10. Francis Cancio Romero rebounds from his race 1 disaster for 11th. Then Evan Adams, Louis Alessi, Christian Gritzko, and Andrew Chow, the rest of the drivers inside the top 15. Then Babin Shabelski, Ty, and a couple other drivers, Chris Harp and Will Robbins, the rest of your top 20. So now we'll jump back and we'll take a look at, give me a second to find this one because it's do a little manual reversing here, but lap 1 in race 1 was messy in Moss Corner. Here we didn't even get that far. Let's take a look.
No, and it looks like it's actually Andrew Chow and Tyler Jones down into the entry to turn 1.
Oh, yeah, right
Chow didn't know he was there, and they go side by side, and then watch Dennis Barrett starts to run off the track. All the cars shoot off the track, just trying to avoid, and you're on cold tires in a front-wheel drive car, it just won't turn. And then as cars try to re-enter the track as safely as they can, some are under...
oh, my goodness. Okay, we're going to watch this in slow motion. How about that? We'll get a bit more time to debrief over this. But, again, I think it was Dennis Barrett that was the first one to go way off course and dragged a couple with him.
And just trying to avoid this incident, you know, you're basically reacting to these guys. You don't know exactly where they're going to end up. And Christoph was off too. Larry, you see a bunch of guys that actually had some success in this race, weren't able to even make it through turn 1 that cleanly. Be curious to actually cut back to the onboard with like someone like Eric Mickey or Andrew Pilata and just see what they saw. Yeah. Because at some point you have nowhere to go, and you just look at this cluster. Man, that was it's like Bathurst when you just have to go to a red flag.
Brian Shabelski in here as well. It's actually he was kind of at the head of this. You mentioned a couple drivers. We're right on board with Andrew Mickey in slow motion here, and this is just a roadblock. You can't go anywhere right here. Everybody's stopping. There's Eric Mickey. He actually gets doored by his teammate, and fortunately, getting hit in the door doesn't hurt you a whole lot in these cars. But what a mess down there. Brad Adams sneaking through. Let's right on board with Brad Adams at full speed as he drove into this mess and how he managed to get through it, albeit with some pretty significant damage. Here's his on board.
You see about 5 cars coming back onto the track. They all pound off the right side wall, and then they have to dissipate that energy somewhere, and everyone shoots back left eventually. So there's basically nowhere to go. And unless you were ahead of basically 5th, 6th place, you weren't getting through there.
Look at the hit that Shabelski took in that orange and white car. Not once, but twice. Then driver's side into the concrete. What a mess. But a big wreck on the opening lap. Took out a whole bunch of cars. Here's one last look through your race 2 results for TCR before we'll jump to break momentarily and talk to your race winners this evening. All 4 of them. Well, I guess all 3 of them, because Darling swept in GS. So stay with us. We'll be right back in just a moment. Welcome back live to Sim TV in the Radenso Sports Car Challenge. Here now with Eric Mickey in the number 88 Bombshell Racing Team TCR. Eric, you won race 1, but I want to know more about race number 2. How chaotic was that in turn 1, lap 1, as everybody went off course and you had to kind of sneak your way up the middle?
I stated to my teammates that I was hoping that we didn't have the same mix-up with the invert as the GS field did, because I felt like it would have been a more relaxing race to just be in the pack and racing people than trying to hold everybody off. That was wrong.
So it was your fault.
It was that was a mess. That I somehow was able to escape that first corner crash without any damage that completely destroyed my night. And I feel like I had the pace that I could have gotten up to second, but they were so close, so all over each other. I didn't feel comfortable trying to make passes and knowing that I'd be able to still finish the race if I did. So I just kind of waited and hoped that people started running into each other, and I avoided them. And with 2 laps to go, I think I jumped, 4 or 5 spots. So everything kind of worked out. I think it was probably a good points race too, considering where my rivals have finish and what they got involved in. So, I mean, a win and then that 4th place is a big night for me at a track that I was not very confident about and still aren't very confident about.
Tom, you got anything for Eric before we send him on his way?
Well, I'm just curious. We're going to Watkins Glen next week, and it seems like you say you seemed pretty confident and pretty competent for sure at COTA, which I would say is not necessarily a high-speed track. And then we move to CTMP, a track that is absolutely high-speed. You say you're not all that confident. How do you feel about Watkins Glen, which I'd say is pretty similar to CTMP?
I probably have 30 times more laps, and that's a conservative estimate, at Watkins Glen than I do at CTMP. So I'm really excited about next week and really the rest of the schedule with the races that we have on here. But I'm really excited about next week. I think that run from the final corner all the way up to the bus stop is going to be a lot of drafting shenanigans, so especially early in the race. So if you can survive that and build up gaps in all of the twisty bits, then you can have a pretty solid race. But I think I'm expecting next week to be a really good race.
Awesome.
Eric Mickey, winner in race 1, 4th in race 2. Eric, thanks for talking. Good luck next week.
Thanks. Great job, guys.
Thank you. We're going to move on now. We're going to talk to Darwin Mites, who won race number 2 in his number 72 Bombshell Racing Team car. Darwin, it's Bombshell sweep of the TCR races tonight, and thankfully for you, you just had to drive away because of all the chaos behind you. What did you see out of the mirror tonight before you went off and drove away for your first win in the series?
It feels really great. Glad Eric invited me out just a couple days ago. He brought it up to me. I'm a terrible qualifier for first race. I was back in the pack, got in a wreck on the first lap. There was the perfect invert, so I started from the pole because I finished 16th and it was 16 invert. I just took advantage of the situation and ran as consistent as possible. I was backing up my corners in a Moss. And I wasn't really pushing it, and I was still gaining time. So yeah, it was chaotic behind me. I saw a couple of your guys' replays, and it was pretty entertaining to watch. And be glad that I was just up ahead. But yeah, it was a great race.
Tomo, anything for Darwin?
No, it's a good track day to watch.
I mean, it looked like it was so easy for you out there driving away, Darwin. But we head to Watkins Glen next week, and your teammate said he's got about 30 times more laps there than at Canadian Tire Motorsports Park. You got to feel pretty confident now after tonight's event. So how confident are you walking into Watkins Glen next week?
Watkins is one of my favorite tracks, so I have pretty high. Yeah, it's a great track, so I have high expectations there, and hopefully I just have fun in these cars. It doesn't matter. I was even having fun after I got wrecked in the first race, and I was running back in 20th. I was having a blast just throwing it in on guys and just it was a riot. Got to thank Eric, Andrew, Peter, and Kurt, teammates. Everybody had fun tonight.
All right, Darwin. Hey, congratulations on your win. Good luck to you next week.
Thank you so much. See you next week.
Thanks. Moving on now, we're going to talk quickly and briefly to Nicholas Johnson, who finished in 2nd place tonight in GS. Nick, it was really intense between you and Ken Ausiel in race 1, and of course in race 2 with you and Paul Darling. Walk us through your night tonight in your Grand Sport car as you tried to chase down Darling after he won both races.
Well, I'm certainly glad you guys have given me some time for my blood pressure to come down, because that was the most intense racing I've been a part of on iRacing thus far. With me and Ken in race 1, we were real hard, real clean. There's a little bit of door bang, but I was able to just hold on for that. Then race 2 with Paul was one for the ages, I think. It's so hard to complete a pass here because it seems like every corner leads into an opposite. So if you're passing in a right, the next corner is a left, and completing the pass and making it happen is so difficult. I tried there on the coming to the white. I figured he was going to defend on the white flag lap, so I was going to try to toss it in and see if I can get in front there, and I just couldn't make it stick. I wanted to be real clean with Paul. We raced together really well, and I didn't want to throw it all away. Really easy to do here. Yeah, it was just a great night. It was a lot of fun.
Nicholas Johnson, impressive run tonight for you. Well, good luck next week at Watkins Glen. We'll talk to you later.
Yeah, that'll be a lot of fun. The super speedway of road courses.
Absolutely, Nick. Have a good night. And moving on now to Paul Darling, who swept both races in Grand Sport tonight. Paul, you had to work pretty hard for him, too, especially in that second race with the drivers right behind you chasing you down. Walk us through your night tonight and holding off those hard chargers.
Yeah, I was just in the first race, I was just hoping Ken would make a mistake that I could take advantage of, and unfortunately for him and luckily for me, he did make a mistake coming out of the last corner, and from there I was able to take the lead and just focus on trying to not bin it all by myself. It's pretty much the same thing in the second race, except Nick was able to pressure me really hard, and we had some great racing. I hope that was entertaining for you guys, but that was as hard and clean as you can get on iRacing, I think.
Tom, anything for Paul?
Curious, we talked to some drivers about Watkins Glen, and Mosport is traditionally known for not having any traditional passing zones. Watkins Glen is almost entirely a passing zone sometimes. So how are you feeling going towards that race?
Watkins Glen is always a lottery. I mean, it's the super speedway of road courses, right? Anyone can win it with how powerful the draft is.
Paul, congratulations on your 2 race wins tonight. Certainly a great points night for you. We'll look forward to seeing you next week at Watkins Glen. Good luck out there.
Thank you very much, guys.
Absolutely. And that's going to end up the interviews tonight here, Tomo. We had 4 spectacular races. What an epic night of action. We're going to continue this next week from our home track, Watkins Glen International in Watkins Glen, New York. As both of the previous drivers mentioned it, the super speedway of road courses, the 11 turns and twists of upstate New York next week, Tom. Another spectacular track, very much in the same feel of Mosport with those elevation change and high-speed corners.
Yeah, and I think we saw, again, 2 kind of different styles of race happen once we split these classes apart. The GS cars, we see a lot of kind of rough racing, a little bit of chaos at points, especially in race number 2. In TCR, barring that one incident that's kind of an anomaly in my opinion, you know, we had very tight, close quarters racing that was a ton of fun to watch. So it'd be really interesting to see how both of those styles of racing, those 2 types of races that we've seen unfold with these 2 different classes, carry over to Watkins Glen next week.
The sun is setting on another day here at Canadian Tire Motorsports Park in Bowmanville, Ontario, and the sun is set on round 2 of the Radenso Sports Car Challenge. Thank you so much to our sponsors, Radenso and Lazy Rocket Vinyl Produce, for coming on board to sponsor this series. Thank you so much for everybody that joined here tonight. If you have not yet subscribed to SimTV, make sure you do that, and also hit the like button if you want to see more. We'll be back again next Wednesday night, 7:30 p.m. for Watkins Glen, New York. We'll see you all next week. Have a great night.